Hi everyone, welcome to Cartoonology. I hope you're all doing well. Today we'll be looking at 2 hours of forgotten regular show lore. But before we begin, I'd just like to kindly ask you all to subscribe. It's completely free and it really helps us improve the videos for this wonderful community we've managed to build. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's begin. First up, we got Pops, Anti-Pops, and the Cycles of the Universe. When regular show fans think about the series finale, most remember the emotional goodbye, or Mordecai getting married. What gets forgotten is the actual cosmic horror lurking underneath the whole story. The universe had been dying and restarting over and over again for billions of years, and nobody knew except for a handful of people scattered across space. This cycle of destruction happened because of two brothers who could not stop fighting each other, no matter how many times they tried. The story begins on a planet called Lollyland. This pink planet looked like something out of a candy store, filled with lollipop-shaped beings who lived peaceful lives. Over billions of years, the species on Lollyland evolved through different forms. None of these versions were considered perfect until one day when Pops was born. His real name was Megacranus, and the people of Lollyland called him the highest state of their species. He represented pure good, the perfect creation that their world had been working toward for eons. But the universe does not allow perfect good to exist without balance. When Pops came into existence, the universe immediately created his opposite. This brother was named Malum Cranus, though he would later be called Anti-Pops. Where Pops embodied kindness and joy, Anti-Pops represented cruelty and destruction. The name Malum Cranus can be interpreted as meaning bad head, which makes sense when you learn what he became. He had white glowing eyes, a dark appearance, and wore black armor with a spiked cape. In his most powerful form, he had a 24-pack of abs and horns on his head, looking more like a demon than a lollipop person. These two brothers were destined to fight. Every 14 billion years, at the end of the universe, Pops and Anti-Pops would have a massive battle. The fight always played out the same way. They would find each other, engage in combat using powers that could destroy planets, and eventually throw punches at the exact same moment. When their fists collided, the explosion would be so powerful that it erased the entire universe. Every star, every planet, every living thing would be wiped out instantly. Then the universe would reset itself back to the beginning, like hitting the restart button on a video game. This cycle had happened many times. Nobody knows the exact number, but there is a way to estimate it. A man named Earl had been training Pops throughout every single cycle. Earl was immortal, and he had a unique way of keeping track. Every time the universe reset and the battle happened again, Earl would get a new tattoo on his body, showing the face of that cycle's version of Pops. By the time of the final battle, Earl's entire body was covered in these tattoos. If you counted them, there were probably around 20 different faces, meaning the universe had been destroyed and reborn at least 20 times, possibly more. The terrifying part is that Lollyland was the only place that survived each reset. While everything else in the universe was erased and recreated from scratch, Lollyland remained unchanged. This allowed the people there to keep records of every battle. They created tapestries showing each conflict, documenting the endless cycle of destruction. These tapestries showed different versions of the fight throughout history. One particularly interesting detail was a tapestry showing Pops and Anti-Pops fighting with pool noodles. The Lollyland natives mentioned that particular battle was fun, which suggests the fights did not always look the same. What made this cycle even more tragic was that the park crew had been involved in every single battle. The tapestries showed earlier versions of Mordecai, Rigby, Benson, Skips, Muscle Man, and High Five Ghost fighting alongside Pops against Anti-Pops. They had died and been reborn countless times, going through the same struggles over and over again without ever remembering their previous lives. Each time the universe reset, they would grow up again, meet again, work at the park again, and eventually travel to space to help Pops fight his brother again. It was an endless loop of friendship, heroism, and death. Pops himself had no memory of these previous cycles. After each reset, he would be reborn as an infant and crash land on Earth. In the most recent cycle, before the finale, he landed on Earth in the early 1900s. A wealthy man named Mr. Mellard found him and decided to adopt him. him. Mr. Mellard gave him the name Pops because of his grisly old face, even though he was just a child. Pops grew up thinking he was human, or at least some kind of normal person. He had no idea he was actually an ancient cosmic being older than the stars themselves. Mr. Mellard knew the truth, though. At some point, he learned about Pop's real identity and his destiny. He tried to give Pops a normal life for as long as possible, but he also made preparations. He created something called the Ice Tape and the Fire VCR, which contained information about Pop's origins. He also conducted dome experiments to prepare for the park eventually going to space. Mr. Mellard knew that one day Pops would have to face his brother again, and he wanted to help his adopted son survive. Auntie Pops spent each cycle hunting for his brother. While Pops lived peaceful lives on Earth with no memory of who he really was, Auntie Pops retained more knowledge and spent his time preparing for their next confrontation. He built armies, gathered weapons, and developed his already terrifying powers. Auntie Pops could destroy planets with his fists, overcome the gravity of black holes with his strength, and erase people from existence with his energy. He could fly through space faster than anything else, create matter out of nothing, and manipulate reality itself. During one fight scene, he turned the universe into a storyboard and created sticky notes that attacked people. One strange habit Auntie Pops had was leaving bad reviews for restaurants online. Even though he never actually visited these places or ate their food, he would give them 1-star ratings. He seemed to enjoy being cruel in small ways, just as much as he enjoyed destroying planets. This detail becomes important later, because it shows that even his smallest actions were driven by negativity and a desire to hurt others. The cycle seemed unbreakable. No matter what Pops tried, no matter how hard he fought, the battle always ended the same way. Their punches would collide, the universe would explode, and everything would start over. The Guardian of Lollyland, a giant statue of a woman, explained that she had witnessed every single one of these battles. She existed specifically to watch the Titans fight every 14 billion years. In all that time, she had never seen a battle end in victory for either side. Every fight resulted in mutual destruction, followed by a universal reset. During the final cycle, things started differently. Pops learned the truth about himself earlier than usual, thanks to the ice tape Mr. Mellard left behind. He met Earl, who began training him to fight Anti-Pops. But Pops did not want to fight. He was a pacifist by nature, kind and gentle to everyone he met. The idea of fighting his own brother, even an evil one, went against everything he believed in. He tried to reason with Auntie Pops, to talk things out peacefully, but Auntie Pops refused. He wanted Pops dead and would not settle for anything less. When the park crew arrived on Lollyland for the final battle, Mordecai came up with an idea. Maybe the reason Pops always lost was because he fought the same way every time. What if they changed the strategy? They decided to set traps for Auntie Pops before the fight even started. They laid out elaborate traps across Lollyland, including one that involved a train hitting Auntie Pops at full speed. When Auntie Pops arrived, he fell into every single trap. He was buried under rubble, burned by fire, and smashed by the train. For a moment, it seemed like the plan worked. But then, Auntie Pops stood up, brushed himself off, and said the traps tickled. Nothing they did could hurt him. The fight began anyway, and soon it escalated beyond anything the park crew could handle. Auntie Pops transformed into his Titan form, a massive version of himself that could step on planets. He began erasing people from existence with his powers. Muscle Man and High Five Ghost were the first to go. Then he destroyed all of Lollyland and everyone on it. He erased the park crew one by one until only Mordecai, Rigby, and Pops remained. Pops transformed into his own Titan form to match his brother. The two giants fought across space, their battle destroying everything in its path. They punched each other through planets, created black holes with their attacks, and warped reality around them. Eventually, just like every time before, they threw simultaneous punches at each other. Mordecai and Rigby, trying to stop the cycle, flew in between the two punches. The collision obliterated the universe and reset time. The reset brought everything back to the beginning of the series, recreating the first episode called The Power. Rigby started experiencing memories of what had just happened, realizing they were in a time loop. He convinced Mordecai by showing him a collection of Blu-ray discs they had buried earlier, which contained recordings of their adventures. These discs somehow survived the Universal Reset. Once they remembered everything, they used an object called the Power to travel through time back to the fight between Pops and Anti-Pops. When they returned, Pops was still fighting his brother. He had flashbacks to earlier conversations with a woman called the Seer, who had told him he needed to try something different. He also remembered an episode where someone suggested killing Anti-Pops with kindness. In that moment, Pops realized what he needed to do. Fighting would never work. The cycle would never end as long as they kept throwing punches. He needed to do something that had never been done before. Pops grabbed his brother in a hug. Anti-Pops, caught off guard by this gesture of love, shrunk down from his titan form back to his normal size. The hug seemed to drain his negative energy, replacing it with the genuine affection of a brother who still cared about him despite everything. For the first time in billions of years, Anti-Pops felt emotion beyond hatred. He looked at Pops and realized someone actually cared about him. Pops knew the hug alone would not be enough. He flew toward Lollyland's sun, still holding his brother tight. Anti-Pops understood what was happening and accepted his fate. As they flew toward the burning star, Anti-Pops showed remorse for his actions. He mentioned wishing he could take back all those one-star reviews he had left. It was a small thing to regret, but it showed he genuinely felt bad about the pain he had caused, even in tiny ways. He hugged his brother back, and together they flew into the sun. The explosion killed them both instantly. But because Pops had chosen love instead of violence, the cycle broke. The universe did not reset this time. Instead, everyone Anti-Pops had erased came back to life. The park crew was restored, Lollyland was rebuilt, and the universe continued existing without restarting. Pop's sacrifice ended billions of years of destruction and rebirth, finally breaking the pattern that seemed unbreakable. The park crew returned to Earth after spending 3 years in space. They built a statue of Pops in the middle of the park to honor his sacrifice. Over the next 25 years, they moved on with their lives. Mordecai became an artist and married a woman who was a bat. Rigby married Eileen and had 2 daughters. Muscleman and Starla had many children. Benson became the owner of the park after Mr. Mellard died and married a woman named Pam. Everyone got happy endings because Pops chose to sacrifice himself instead of continuing the endless cycle of fighting. The final scene of Regular Show takes place in what appears to be heaven. Pops is shown watching a VHS tape labeled Regular Show, implying he spent his afterlife rewatching the adventures he had with his friends. He spoke the final line of the entire series, saying his signature phrase one last time, "Jolly good show." Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Skips, Walks, and the Deal with the Guardians of Eternal Youth. Skips, Walks, and the Deal with the Guardians of Eternal Youth. Regular Show fans know Skips as the wise, strong Yeti who always knows how to fix supernatural problems. He never runs or walks anywhere, always skipping from place to place. Most people just accept this as a quirky character trait and move on. What gets forgotten is the absolutely heartbreaking reason why Skips does this, and the terrible price he paid to become the immortal being everyone relies on. Behind that calm, knowledgeable exterior lies one of the saddest backstories in the entire show. Skips was not always named Skips. In the year 1814, when he attended Bennett High School, everyone called him Walks. He was a young Yeti with dark hair, wearing a school uniform with brown pants, a brown suit, black tie, white shirt underneath, white socks, and black shoes. Unlike the calm Skips people know from the park, Walks had a reputation. He had been expelled from multiple schools for fighting. Walks loved adventure and combat, and he thought school was worthless for someone like him. On his first day at Bennett High, Headmaster Bennett warned him that if he got into any more fights, he would be expelled immediately. On that same first day, Walks met a character who would become one of his closest friends. Gareth, who would later change his name to Gary, was a student at Bennett High who had stars for eyes and served as a guide for new students. Gareth showed Walks around the school, pointing out all the different groups. There were athletes and cheer directors, including one person dressed as a dodo bird. There were bookish types standing around with books. There were dramatic students performing Shakespeare. And then Gareth introduced Walks to his own group, which he called the Immortal Student Council. The Immortal Student Council consisted of 5 massive babies floating in midair. Despite their infant appearances, they had deep, mature voices and wore gold hats, brown bibs, and white diapers. Their names were Reginald, Archibald, Oswald, Boswald, and Griswold. They also functioned as the school's glee club, and they sang a welcoming song to Walks as they showed him to his locker. These 5 babies were not normal students. They were immortal beings who would later be known as the Guardians of Eternal Youth. The Immortal Student Council had an evil brother named Clorgbane the Destroyer. Clorgbane looked like an adult baby, much larger than the others, with a dark appearance and wielding a massive mace. He wanted to join the Immortal Student Council and be part of their group, but they refused to let him join. Clorgbane had committed evil deeds in order to gain control of the school, and the council wanted nothing to do with him. Instead, Clorgbane became the school bully, terrorizing everyone and running Bennett High through fear. On Walk's first day, Clorgbane made his presence known. He struck Reginald in front of everyone, establishing that he owned the school and nobody could stop him. Walks warned Clorgbane to leave them alone, but Clorgbane mocked him and pushed him. Walks was about to retaliate when Headmaster Bennett showed up and prevented the fight. As the headmaster left, Clorgbane muttered that this was not over between them. Walks had just made a powerful enemy. At lunch that day, Walks struggled to find a place to sit. That is when a girl asked if he would like to sit with her. She introduced herself as Desdemona, though she told Walks he could call her Mona. Mona had light blonde curly hair, wore a faded maroon-colored dress with a hat that had a bouquet on it, and her clothes were popular in the 1900s to 1920s. When Walks tried the cafeteria soup, he did a spit take and sprayed it all over Mona. She laughed and explained that all the cafeteria food should be avoided because it was disgusting. Somehow the kitchen even ruined Apple Brown Betty, which only had 4 ingredients. Walks and Mona started to fall in love. They went on dates together and spent time working on decorations for the upcoming prom, which had an underwater theme. Mona taught Walks how to be handy with tools while they prepared the decorations. She also taught him something more important. Mona told Walks that she did not like guys who fought. She believed violence was never the answer. Walks, wanting to be with Mona, promised her he would never fight again. This promise would become tragically important. The Immortal Student Council approached Walks with a plan. They had calculated that Walks could defeat Clorgbane with the help of some powerful weapons. They showed him the Fists of Justice, special gloves they had designed and built that would give Walks the power to hurt Clorgbane. No ordinary mortal could harm Clorgbane due to his immortal nature, but the Fists of Justice could change that. The council scheduled a fight between Walks and Clorgbane for Saturday at 8 o'clock in the evening. There was one major problem. The prom was also scheduled for Saturday at 8 o'clock in the evening. Clorgbane participated in a surprising number of extracurricular activities, and 8 o'clock on Saturday was the only time he had available to fight. Walks found himself torn between 2 commitments. He had promised to take Mona to prom, but he had also agreed to fight Clorgbane to help his friends. Gareth told him they would handle it and wait for the right moment. Prom night arrived. Walks knocked on Mona's door, and her father answered. Mona came down wearing a necklace that Walks had given her earlier. It was a heart-shaped locket containing 2 photographs, one of Walks and one of Mona. Before giving her the locket, Walks had told Mona a story about a bee that once landed on her hat. He claimed he let her sit still for what felt like eternity until the bee flew away. Mona believed him until Walks revealed there was no bee. He only told her that story so he could take her photograph without her knowing. Mona laughed at being tricked and asked Walks to help her put the necklace on. At the prom, Walks and Mona danced together. The song Forever Young by Alphaville played, which was fitting for a story about immortality. Everything seemed perfect. Walks got drinks for both of them and told Mona he needed to use the bathroom. She pointed out the drink would never digest that quickly, but she wanted to take a photograph first. She said it would only take 10 minutes, but the time was already 8:05. Outside, Gareth, the Immortal Student Council, and Clorgbane were waiting for Walks. Gareth knocked on the window to get his attention. Walks saw them, but continued dancing with Mona. Clorgbane, frustrated that Walks would not come out to fight, decided that if Walks would not come to him, he would go to Walks. Clorgbane burst through the window and surrounding wall, crashing into the ballroom. He picked up Mona and threw her away from Walks. Mona, seeing how Clorgbane really acted, finally gave Walks permission to fight. She understood now that Clorgbane was a bully who needed to be stopped. Walks engaged Clorgbane in combat. He punched him repeatedly, but quickly realized he was doing nothing to hurt him. Clorgbane only needed one punch to knock Walks across the room. Clorgbane then raised his mace, ready to finish Walks off with a killing blow. Mona saw what was about to happen and made a choice. She pushed Walks out of the way, saving his life. Clorgbane missed Walks with his mace, but the weapon hit the floor and created a crack. The crack traveled across the floor and up the wall, reaching the ceiling. A massive chunk of ceiling debris fell directly on top of Mona. Gareth finally threw the fists of justice to Walks. Now armed with the weapons that could actually hurt Clorgbane, Walks went into a rage. He pummeled Clorgbane with everything he had, eventually punching him so hard that Clorgbane was sent flying into space, disappearing into a twinkle in the night sky. The Immortal Student Council calculated that Clorgbane's trajectory had put him into an orbital path around the solar system that would bring him back to Earth in exactly 157 years. But the victory meant nothing to Walks. He rushed to Mona's side, but the Guardians were already surrounding her body, which was blocked by the roof debris. Reginald searched through the rubble and found the only thing intact. The heart-shaped locket that Walks had given Mona was still shining. Reginald shook his head at Walks sadly. She was dead. Tears silently streamed down Walks' face. Many of the students who had witnessed the tragedy began crying. Walks later said that Mona was the only woman he ever loved. The next few years were rough for Walks. He grew a beard and wore different clothes, clearly showing the depression and grief he experienced. One day, Gareth and the Immortal Student Council, who were now calling themselves the Guardians of Eternal Youth, summoned Walks to their realm. They lived in a place floating in space that looked like an oasis, and they told Walks they split the rent 5 ways. The Guardians explained that by their calculations, Clorgbane's orbit would return him to Earth in 157 years from now. When he returned, he would harm others. They asked Walks if he would become immortal and fight Clorgbane when he returned. Walks agreed to do it, but the Guardians warned him that immortality had a price. He would outlive his family. He would see loved ones come and go. Everyone he knew would die while he continued living. Walks, with tears in his eyes, told them he had already lost the one he loved. There was nothing left for him to lose. The Guardians accepted his answer and told him he needed to choose a new name to be reborn under. Walks thought back to his time with Mona. He remembered her feet skipping in the hallway. He remembered them skipping together on their dates. He remembered Mona telling him she was so happy that she would skip for the rest of the day. Walks made his decision. He told the Guardians he had chosen the name Skips. The Guardians granted him immortality, and Walks became Skips. He explained that he would skip until the end of eternity as his way of being close to Mona. The immortality came with one requirement. Every year on his birthday, Skips had to perform a ritual called the Spirit Dance for the Guardians of Eternal Youth. This dance needed to be completed without interruption, or his immortality would be stripped away. Skips took this ritual very seriously. always secluding himself in the woods on his birthday to perform it in private. The dance involved a blue bonfire and Skips chanting while moving in specific patterns around the fire. Many years later, when Skips worked at the park with Mordecai and Rigby, the two discovered it was his birthday. They wanted to throw him a surprise party, mainly because they wanted to eat the chocolate cake that was kept at the park snack bar. The cake was only available on someone's birthday, and they had been craving chocolate cake all day. They tracked Skips down in the woods that night and found him performing the spirit dance around the mysterious blue bonfire. Rigby, not understanding what was happening, startled Skips and interrupted the ritual. The blue fire went out. Skips was furious, shouting that they had interrupted his spirit dance and asking if they realized what they had done. A flying car descended from the sky. Gary stepped out with his star eyes and explained to Skips that he had to bring him to the Guardians. Gary said he was just doing his job, though it was clear the two were still friends despite the circumstances. Mordecai and Rigby snuck into the back of Gary's El Camino as it flew through space and entered a wormhole. They arrived at the Guardians of Eternal Youth's realm. The 5 giant babies floated in the sky, and Gary presented Skips to them. The Guardians were angry that Skips had failed to complete the spirit dance. They explained that the pact for his eternal youth had been broken. As punishment, they began shaking their magic rattles. Each Guardian was equipped with one of these rattles, which allowed them to perform magic. The rattles started stripping Skips of his immortality, causing him to age rapidly. Mordecai and Rigby watched in horror as Skips aged before their eyes. His body became older and more decrepit. His nose crumbled away and turned to dust. He continued aging faster and faster until he shriveled up completely. Mordecai tried to explain to the Guardians that it was his and Rigby's fault, not Skips. They were the ones who interrupted the dance. The Guardians refused to change their punishment. Once their decision was made, it could not be undone. Then the Guardians noticed something. Mordecai and Rigby had brought a chocolate cake with them. The Guardians became extremely excited. They had an unhealthy obsession with cake, especially chocolate cake. They gathered together and whispered amongst themselves. One Guardian asked what flavor it was, and when told it was chocolate, they whispered some more. Finally, they announced they had reached a new decision. They would restore Skips's eternal youth in exchange for the cake. Mordecai placed the cake on the floor, and the Guardians accepted the deal. They pointed their rattles at the pile of dust that used to be Skips and shot beams of white energy. Skips was restored to his normal self. His immortality returned. The Guardians took the cake and rubbed it all over themselves, much to Rigby's disgust. They teleported Skips, Mordecai, and Rigby back to Skip's house at the park, where everyone was waiting for the birthday party. The deal with the Guardians remained in place. Every year on Skip's birthday, he had to perform the spirit dance without interruption. If he failed, his immortality would be stripped away again. This continued for over a century. 157 years after the first fight, Clorgbane's orbit finally brought him back to Earth. Gary appeared to collect Skips for the rematch. Unfortunately, Skips had injured his hands earlier that day when Rigby accidentally crushed his fingers in a harpsichord lid. Mordecai and Rigby snuck into Gary's car again and followed them to the Guardians' realm. The Guardians summoned the Fists of Justice for Skips to use in battle. When Clorgbane arrived, he immediately engaged Skips in combat. Skips tried to fight, but could not use the Fists of Justice properly due to his broken hands. Clorgbane dominated the fight, knocking Skips around and preparing to finish him off. One of the Guardians, Archibald, decided to stand up to Clorgbane himself. Archibald floated forward and threatened to crush Clorgbane, to make him eat his diaper like a giant diaper sandwich, and then make him wear it like a cape after he finished eating it. Clorgbane said hello to Archibald, then immediately stabbed him through the stomach with his spike, killing him instantly. This reduced the Guardians of Eternal Youth from 5 members to 4 members. The remaining Guardians transferred the Fists of Justice from Skips to Mordecai and Rigby. The two discovered that the gloves had controls inside them that worked like a video game they played called Alley Fight Dudes. Using these controls, they were able to punch Clorgbane repeatedly. Eventually, they grabbed his neck and punched him so hard that he was sent flying back into space. Clorgbane shouted that he would be back before disappearing. The Guardians thanked Mordecai and Rigby for saving them and offered them eternal life or supreme knowledge of the universe as a reward. Mordecai and Rigby used their reward to make the Guardians move a harpsichord for them. Throughout all of Regular Show's run, Skips maintained his promise to Mona. He never walked anywhere, always skipping. This was his way of staying close to her memory, honoring the woman who had sacrificed herself to save him. He kept the heart-shaped locket she wore on the night she died, occasionally looking at the photographs inside and shedding a tear before returning to work. Skip's immortality made him the most knowledgeable person at the park. He had lived for over 500 years and had seen countless supernatural events. Whenever Mordecai and Rigby caused a problem with their slacking off, Skips almost always knew how to fix it. His experience, combined with his superhuman strength, made him invaluable to everyone. But that knowledge and strength came at a terrible cost. He had to watch everyone around him age and die while he remained young. He could never have a normal relationship or start a family because he would outlive them all. The Guardians of Eternal Youth continued to play a role in Skip's life and the lives of the park crew. They appeared throughout the series, sometimes helping and sometimes creating obstacles. In one instance, Reginald joined a team called the Magical Elements and used magic to cheat in bowling tournaments. In another episode, when someone named Quentin Quippinger told too many jokes during a game, Reginald got so angry that he imprisoned both Quentin and Skips in a cube. During the final battle against Antipops in the series finale, the Guardians of Eternal Youth showed up to help the park crew. They fought alongside everyone else to save the universe from being destroyed. Despite some of their questionable actions throughout the series, they ultimately aligned themselves with good and helped Pops defeat his evil brother. Skip's story serves as a reminder that immortality is not a gift. It is a burden. He made a deal with cosmic beings to live forever so he could protect people from a bully who killed the woman he loved. Every skip he takes is a memorial to Mona, a physical manifestation of his grief that never ends. While everyone else at the park sees Skips as the reliable problem solver who always knows what to do, they rarely think about the centuries of pain that created the person they depend on. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Mr. Mellard's Secrets, the park's ownership, and the Hidden Dome experiment. Mr. Mellard's Secrets, the park's ownership, and the Hidden Dome experiment. 4. Most of Regular Show, fans saw Mr. Mellard as a grumpy old rich man who owned the park and constantly yelled at Benson. He was the boss nobody wanted to deal with, always finding something to complain about and never remembering Benson's name correctly. What gets forgotten is that this angry businessman was hiding one of the most elaborate secret missions in television history, and everything he did for over a century was part of a plan to save the universe. Mr. Mellard was born sometime in the early 1700s. He lived through centuries of American history, witnessing wars and the rise of modern civilization. When he was younger, Mr. Mellard worked as a meteor fragment salesman. People at that time liked the look of meteorites, so they would pay good money for pieces from fallen space rocks. Mr. Mellard went on expeditions to find recently fallen meteorites, searching for valuable fragments to sell. One day, a brand new meteor fell from the sky. Mr. Mellard thought it was his lucky day. He gathered his expedition team and went to inspect it, expecting to find valuable meteor fragments worth a pretty penny. When they arrived at the crash site, they found something else entirely. Inside the asteroid was a baby. The baby had a massive round head and looked extremely old despite being an infant. Mr. Mellard called him Pops because of his grisly old face. With the baby, Mr. Mellard found a scroll. The scroll explained that Pops was special, not of this earth. It told the tale of two brothers. One brother was the embodiment of pure good, destined to protect the universe. The other brother was filled with pure evil, with an instinct only to destroy. These two brothers were destined to be at war with one another. Mr. Mellard hoped he had found the good one. Mr. Mellard hated returning things.
Instead of trying to send Pops back to wherever he came from, he decided to keep the baby and raise him as his own son. But Mr. Mellard knew that Pops had a dangerous destiny ahead of him. The scroll made it clear that Pops would eventually have to fight his evil brother. Mr. Mellard wanted Pops to live a normal, safe life for as long as possible before that destiny caught up with him. To keep Pops safe and hidden, Mr. Mellard decided to hide him in the most ordinary place he could find. He bought a local park, creating what appeared to be a completely normal environment. The park became Pop's home, a place where he could grow up surrounded by simple, everyday activities. Mr. Mellard built a house on the property, and Pops lived there with him and his wife, Mrs. Mellard. All Mr. Mellard wanted was for Pops to live out the rest of his days safely on Earth, far away from cosmic battles and universe-ending conflicts. Pops grew up slowly, much slower than a normal human being. His alien physiology meant he aged at a different rate. As a child, Pops developed an obsession with looking through his telescope at a pink planet in the sky. This pink planet was actually Lollyland, his homeworld, though Pops did not know this at the time. Every time Pops tried to look at his favorite planet when he got older, Mr. Mellard would interrupt him. This constant interference made Pops angry, which would cause him to show hidden powers, though never his full potential. Mr. Mellard knew what that pink planet represented, and tried to prevent Pops from discovering the truth about his origins for as long as possible. As Pops grew older, he reluctantly joined his father's business. Mr. Mellard continued running the park, and made Pops work there as a park manager, though Pops acted more like a groundskeeper. The park employed several workers over the years. Eventually, a gumball machine named Benson became the park manager, reporting directly to Mr. Mellard. Benson hired groundskeepers and other workers, including a blue jay named Mordecai and a raccoon named Rigby. Mr. Mellard treated his employees, especially Benson, very poorly. He constantly yelled at Benson and never remembered his name correctly. He called Benson names like Beanhead, Ball Bucket, and Bean Teen. Mr. Mellard blamed Benson for everything that went wrong at the park, even when the problems were clearly caused by Mordecai and Rigby's shenanigans. His logic was that since Benson was in charge, it was his responsibility to control his employees. Mr. Mellard came across as a greedy businessman who cared little about the people who worked for him. This harsh treatment was partially a cover. Mr. Mellard was described as impossible to surprise due to post-war trauma. He always slept with his eyes wide open. Despite his grumpy exterior and terrible management style, he genuinely loved Pops and wanted to protect his adopted son. Every decision he made, even the ones that seemed cruel or arbitrary, was part of a larger plan. As Pops lived his normal life at the park, Mr. Mellard prepared for the inevitable. He knew from the scroll that the universe was beginning to unravel, and that it could only be the work of Anti-Pops, Pops's evil brother who was out there somewhere. Mr. Mellard understood that one day, Pops would have to confront his brother to save the universe. He began making preparations, creating backup plans and gathering resources for when that day arrived. Mr. Mellard created two very specific items. He obtained a VCR that was literally on fire, constantly burning but never being consumed. This was called the Fire VCR. He also created or obtained a VHS tape made entirely out of ice, known as the Ice Tape. The Ice Tape contained crucial information about Pop's origins and destiny. Mr. Mellard recorded a message on this tape, explaining everything he knew about Pops, Anti-Pops, and the prophecy. He stored these items in separate locations, knowing they would be needed when the time was right. The third major preparation Mr. Mellard made was the dome experiments. This was perhaps his most elaborate and secretive operation. Mr. Mellard worked with scientists, including someone named Dr. Dome and Dr. Reuben Langer, to develop a massive dome that could be placed over the entire park. The stated purpose of this dome was to create a contained ecosystem for scientific study. The real purpose was far more important.
The dome experiment began when Mr. Mellard volunteered the park for what appeared to be a strange government project. Benson received an email explaining that a group of scientists would seal the park in a dome to create a contained ecosystem, and they would study it for a whole month. Benson was told the dome would be dropped the next day, giving everyone time to move out since they lived at the park. Benson made an announcement during a normal park meeting. He explained that the park was going to be sealed in a dome the following day. The park workers who lived there, including Mordecai, Rigby, Skips, Muscleman, and High Five Ghost, would need to find somewhere else to stay for a month. Benson seemed unconcerned because he did not live at the park. As Benson finished explaining the situation, strong winds began blowing through the park. Everyone looked up to see a giant dome being dropped onto the park right at that moment. The dome sealed immediately, trapping everyone inside. Benson was shocked and confused. He insisted the dome was supposed to drop the next day, not today. He called Mr. Mellard, who was sitting in his limousine outside the dome. Mr. Mellard claimed he could not hear Benson through the dome and hung up after receiving a bag of money from a scientist. Benson refused to believe he had gotten the date wrong. He was Benson after all, and Benson never made mistakes like that. He called an emergency meeting in his office and tried to show everyone the email he received with the correct date. The power went out right as he turned his monitor around. Benson became obsessed with proving he was right about the date. While Benson investigated what was happening, the other park workers tried to adapt to living inside the dome for a month. They rationed food, established routines, and dealt with the strange situation. Benson eventually discovered the truth. Mr. Mellard had secretly changed the date in the email. The dome was supposed to drop that day, and Mr. Mellard deliberately gave Benson the wrong information so everyone would be trapped inside when it sealed. Scientists working for the Dome Project actively tried to stop Benson from discovering this truth. They created fake puppets of the park workers to trick Benson. They drugged him multiple times. They even disguised themselves as park workers to see how much Benson knew. The fake Rigby accidentally revealed himself by calling Benson Sir, something the real Rigby would never do. Later, when a fake Benson apologized and admitted he got the date wrong, Mordecai and Rigby knew immediately it was an imposter because the real Benson would never admit he was wrong so easily. Eventually, Benson and the park crew escaped the dome and confronted Mr. Mellard. They demanded to know the truth about why he trapped them inside. Mr. Mellard gave several different excuses. First, he claimed the experiment was a test to see how the park and its employees would do in a zombie apocalypse. Nobody believed this obvious lie. When pressed further, Mr. Mellard finally admitted the truth, or at least what he claimed was the truth. He said he just felt like buying a big dome to put on the park because he was rich. This was the answer everyone accepted, though it seemed absurd. The dome experiment did not end there. A few months later, the dome returned to the park, causing confusion among the workers again. Mr. Mellard was controlling the operation once again. This time, Dr. Langer was more directly involved. He installed a button inside the dome and ordered the park workers to protect it. The park workers managed to not press the button, and it was locked up for safekeeping. The dome stayed on the park for the rest of Season 7, with dome scientists studying the park workers. The scientists, including a woman named Pam, who would later become Benson's girlfriend, observed everything that happened inside the dome. The park workers went about their daily lives, unaware they were being constantly monitored. The true purpose of all these dome experiments was revealed later. Mr. Mellard and Dr. Langer were working with something called the SPARK Initiative. SPARK may have been a combination of the words space and park, or it could have been an acronym for something. The goal of the SPARK Initiative was to bring different parks from around the world into space, parking them in massive space stations. Multiple parks were selected from different countries, including Jamaica, Vatican City, and India. The United States representation in SPARK was Mr. Mellard's park. Mr. Mellard had signed an agreement with Dr. Reuben Langer, the current director of the SPARK Initiative. All the dome experiments were tests and preparations to ensure the park could function as a self-contained unit in space.
In the special episode called Rigby's Graduation Day, the final phase of the plan began.
The park workers were instructed to press the button that had been locked up. They arrived at the park and pressed it.
Suddenly, everything started shaking violently. The dome door locked, preventing anyone from leaving. Everyone in the park attempted to escape as the structure began lifting off the ground. The entire park, encased in the protective dome, flew up into space.
When Mr. Mellard realized this was happening, he cried. He understood he might never see his son again. Dr. Langer tried to reassure him by putting a hand on his shoulder, telling him not to worry. But Mr. Mellard knew the truth. His son was being sent into space to fulfill his destiny, and there was a very real chance Pops would not survive. Despite Mr. Mellard's heavy involvement in the dome experiment and the Spark Initiative, he refused to comment on the matter when questioned on live television. He kept the true purpose secret from everyone, including the park workers themselves. They did not understand why they had been sent to space until they found the ice tape. In space, the park workers eventually located the ice tape on an ice planet. They brought it to a sacred mountain where 3 video store clerks lived. These clerks, named Joel, Fee, and Kai, guarded 3 mystical VCRs. One VCR appeared normal, but was actually a trap with eyes and a gun hidden inside. One VCR was made of ice. One VCR was on fire. The clerks explained that the ice tape would only work in one of these 3 VCRs, and choosing the wrong one would destroy the information on the tape forever. The excellent knight, who had found a job guarding relics outside the Andromeda Galaxy after posting his resume on a job website, served as the guardian of these VCRs. He was not allowed to give hints, but his tone and expression made it clear that only an idiot would pick the normal-looking VCR. Pops had a flashback to his childhood. He remembered a mailman delivering a burning VCR to Mr. Mellard. The mailman warned Mr. Mellard it was quite hot and should be handled carefully. Mr. Mellard told the mailman not to tell him how to handle his highly futuristic equipment. The mailman offered to upgrade the VCR to a lifetime warranty for 25 cents. Mr. Mellard refused, calling it a scam and telling the mailman to get out of his house. Based on this memory, Pops realized they needed to use the fire VCR. Even though the tape was made of ice, which logically should melt in fire, Pops trusted his memory. He inserted the ice tape into the fire VCR. The excellent knight congratulated him for choosing wisely. A hologram of Mr. Mellard appeared in the flames. Mr. Mellard congratulated Pops for finding the tape. He explained that he could not be more proud, and it was high time he explained some things. Mr. Mellard told the complete story of how he found Pops in the meteor, the scroll explaining Pops' destiny, and his decision to hide Pops in the most ordinary place he could find. He revealed that Anti-Pops was out there somewhere, with an instinct only to destroy, and the universe was beginning to unravel. Mr. Millard told Pops he had the power to stop Anti-Pops. Pops was the only one standing between his evil brother and the destruction of the universe. Mr. Mellard explained that Pops had probably started noticing his body changing, finding powers where there were no powers before. These were the beginning manifestations of his true form. Pops needed to learn to harness his powers if he was to survive. The scroll mentioned a trainer named Earl, the strongest and most powerful teacher who could teach Pops how to use his powers. Mr. Mellard ended the message by saying he knew it was a lot to take in, but he believed in Pops. Finally, Mr. Mellard said something that revealed his true feelings. He told Pops that he may not be his real father, but Pops was always his real son. Everything Mr. Mellard did, from buying the park to creating the ice tape to conducting the dome experiments, was part of an elaborate plan to prepare Pops for his destiny while giving him as many normal years as possible. The harsh treatment of employees, the seemingly arbitrary business decisions, the secret deals with scientists, all of it served a purpose. Mr. Mellard sacrificed his reputation and relationships to protect his adopted son and prepare him to save the universe. After the park dome spent 3 years in space, It finally returned to Earth. The park workers landed back at their original location and reunited with their friends and families. Mr. Mellard was present when the dome landed. Mordecai noticed Mr. Mellard staring up at the sky and shedding a tear. Pops was not with them. He had sacrificed himself in the final battle against Anti-Pops to save the universe. Mr. Mellard attended his son's memorial service. A statue was erected in the middle of the park in Pop's honor. Mr.
Mellard had to live with the knowledge that all his preparations, all his planning, all the dome experiments and secret arrangements had led to his son's death. But Pops died saving the universe,
which is exactly what the scroll said he was destined to do. Within 25 years after Pop's death, Mr. Mellard passed away himself. When the park workers reunited for a 25-year reunion, they erected a second statue next to Pop's monument. This statue honored Mr. Mellard. Benson had become the owner of the park after Mr. Mellard's death, inheriting the property from the man who had yelled at him and called him the wrong names for so many years. In the epilogue of the series finale, it is revealed that Benson became Mr. Mellard's caretaker during his final days. Despite all the yelling and name-calling, Mr. Mellard left his possessions and the ownership of the park to Benson. Benson was the only person as close to Mr. Mellard as Pops, possibly due to Mr. Mellard's gratitude for all Benson's hard work as a steadfast park manager. Mr. Mellard never admitted this gratitude while alive, but his final decision showed his true feelings. The park itself became a symbol of Mr. Mellard's secret mission. What everyone thought was just a rich man's investment property was actually a sanctuary designed to hide and protect an alien being from cosmic forces. Every tree, every building, every mundane detail of the park served the purpose of making Pop's life as ordinary as possible. The park was not meant to be profitable or impressive. It was meant to be forgettable, invisible, the last place anyone would look for the chosen one destined to fight in a battle for the universe. Mr. Mellard spent over a century maintaining this cover. He employed people like Benson, who would keep the park running smoothly. He tolerated chaos from employees like Mordecai and Rigby, because their surreal, supernatural misadventures actually helped prepare Pops for the strangeness he would encounter in his true destiny. The park became a training ground without anyone realizing it. The dome experiments represented the final phase of Mr. Mellard's plan. He knew that eventually the park would need to leave Earth and travel into space so Pops could confront Anti-Pops. The dome tests ensured the park could function as a self-contained ecosystem during space travel. The button installation created a launch mechanism. The constant surveillance by dome scientists gathered data to ensure everyone's survival in space. Mr. Mellard coordinated with government agencies and scientific organizations without revealing the true cosmic stakes. He presented everything as eccentric rich man behavior or legitimate scientific research. Nobody suspected that the grumpy old lollipop man who owned a failing park was secretly orchestrating one of the most important missions in universal history. Everything came together in the final season. The park launched into space. The crew found the ice tape. Pops learned his true identity. Earl trained him to use his powers. The park dome flew to Lollyland. The final battle occurred. Pops broke the cycle of universal destruction. Mr. Mellard's plan succeeded, even though it cost him his son. Mr. Mellard's story is about the lengths a father will go to protect his child. He gave Pops decades of normalcy, shielding him from a destiny he could not escape. He prepared everything Pops would need when the time came. He made difficult choices, including sending his son into space, knowing he might never return. And he did all of this while pretending to be nothing more than an angry businessman who could not even remember his park manager's name. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Exit 9B, Rewritten History, and the Night Every Villain Came Back. Exit 9B, Rewritten History, and the Night Every Villain Came Back. Most regular show fans remember Exit 9B as the episode where all the villains returned. What gets forgotten is that this was not just a battle. It was the complete erasure and rewriting of everyone's memories. A 2-month period where the park workers lived entirely different lives with no knowledge of who they used to be, and the introduction of a new character on the worst possible first day of work in television history. The episode began with Thomas arriving at the park for his first day as an intern. Thomas was a goat who needed the internship for college credit and recommendations. He entered the house looking for Benson. As he got a call from his mother, he told her it was his first internship day and he would get recommendations. Right before Thomas could hang up, a crash was heard outside. Thomas frantically ran outside to investigate. To his shock and horror, he saw complete chaos. A mysterious bearded man was chasing and shooting the park employees with a laser stun gun. Mordecai, Rigby, Pops, Skips, Muscle Man, High Five Ghost, and Benson were all running for their lives. The bearded stranger fired at each of them, one by one. Every person hit by the laser had their memory instantly erased. Only Mordecai and Rigby managed to escape. Rigby grabbed an important document while Mordecai activated the time machine from the Bad Kiss episode. Just as the bearded man was about to shoot them, the time machine activated. Mordecai and Rigby disappeared in a golden aura, traveling forward in time. The bearded man walked up to the house. He shouted that they should have sold the park to him when they had the chance. He pulled out a detonation device and pressed a button. The entire house exploded in a massive fireball. The bearded man laughed maniacally as a dark vortex cloud formed above the rubble. Thomas watched the destruction in complete shock and horror, having witnessed everything on his first day. 2 months passed. The park workers had been living completely different lives with no memory of each other or their real identities. The bearded man had given each of them new jobs and fake memories. Skips now ran his own auto body shop called Skip's Place. He worked as a mechanic, fixing cars for customers. Pops worked as a tour guide at a butterfly sanctuary, wearing a mustard-colored shirt and hat. Muscle Man became a college physics professor, teaching students equations while dressed in a professor's uniform. High Five Ghost became a pizza delivery man, wearing a pizza delivery cap and working for a local restaurant. Benson still worked at the park, but now he was employed by the bearded stranger as an abused assistant who got yelled at constantly. The park itself had been completely demolished. In its place was a massive construction site. Workers were building a freeway that would run directly through where the park used to be. This freeway was called Exit 9B. A sign on the gate read, "Exit 9B, coming soon." Thomas remained at the park as the stranger's intern and coffee boy. Nobody, except Mordecai, Rigby, and Thomas, remembered anything about the park or their previous lives. Behind a caravan in an alley, Mordecai and Rigby appeared in a ball of light. The time machine had transported them 2 months into the future. Mordecai landed on the time machine, breaking it in the process. They immediately went searching for their friends. They arrived at Skip's house, but he was not there. Looking through windows, they saw a business card that said, Skip's Place. Mordecai and Rigby ran to Skip's auto body shop. At the shop, Skips was working on cars. He looked at his list and called out asking if anyone named Pops was there. Pops, wearing his zookeeper outfit, looked up from his seat. Skips told Pops his car was ready and handed him a clipboard to sign. Pops hoped the car was not any trouble and looked at Skip's name tag, reading the name Mr. Skips out loud. Pops signed the paper and left with his car. Skips had no idea who Pops was. Outside, Muscle Man was dressed in his professor uniform and began to cross the road. Pops nearly ran him over with his car. Muscle Man threw his suitcase at Pop's car in anger, shouting that he would find out where Pops lived. He picked up his suitcase and ran into High Five Ghost, who was wearing his pizza delivery cap. High Five Ghost asked Muscle Man where the park was. Muscle Man told him he could not worry about it now because he was late for a quantum mechanics lecture. High Five Ghost hovered over to a sign that gave directions to the park. Mordecai and Rigby arrived at Skip's shop and tried to talk to him, Skips did not remember them at all. He explained that Exit 9B was going to make a huge difference in people's lives by connecting South I-85 to Southwest 85B. He told them if they needed help with their car, he was their guy, but otherwise, they should get out. Rigby protested that this was not the Skips they knew. Skips loomed over Rigby and roared that he did not know them. Rigby desperately tried to make Skips remember by slapping him in the face. This made Skips extremely angry. He pinned both Mordecai and Rigby up against the wall by their necks, choking them in a fit of rage. He demanded to know their game and who they worked for. Mordecai, while gagging, tried to remind Skips that technically he was one of their bosses. Skips called them liars. Then Rigby had an idea. He told Skips they knew why his name was Skips. He asked Skips to remember the only woman he ever loved. Suddenly, Skips' eyes widened. Flashbacks appeared in his head from multiple past episodes. He saw memories from Diary, The Power, Death Punchies, This Is My Jam, Over the Top, and Skips Strikes. All these memories involved his relationship with Mona and his experiences at the park. Skips let go of Mordecai and Rigby, who fell to the ground coughing and gasping for air. His real memories had returned. Mordecai and Rigby filled Skips in on the details and explained the situation. Rigby showed Skips the document they had been carrying. It was from City Hall and could end the freeway construction by making the park a historical site. But for it to be effective, the document needed to be signed by every member of the park staff. Once everyone signed it, it would be against the law to build Exit 9B, and the park would return to normal. Skips agreed to help. The three of them went to find the other park workers. They found Pops at the Butterfly Sanctuary, where he worked as a tour guide. They restored his memory by making him remember past experiences. Pops had flashbacks from The Power, Karaoke Video, Prankless, Just Set Up the Chairs, Go Viral, Brain Eraser, Sugar Rush, and The Best Burger in the World. His real memories returned, and he happily agreed to help save the park. Next, they went to a school where Muscle Man was teaching physics. Muscle Man was explaining an equation on the chalkboard to his students. Mordecai tried to bring Muscle Man's memory back by asking him a specific question. He asked Muscle Man if he knew who else's C equals 8. Muscle Man instinctively answered, "My mom," and immediately had flashbacks from multiple episodes. He remembered scenes from Fuzzy Dice, Big Winner, Trash Boat, In the House, Death Metal Crash Pit, Muscle Mentor, Gut Model, and Slam Dunk. Muscle Man flipped the table in excitement and crashed through a nearby door. His real memories had returned. Mordecai, Rigby, Pops, Muscle Man, and Skips went to Skip's place to wait for High Five Ghost. High Five Ghost arrived at the door with a pizza and knocked. The five grabbed him inside. Muscle Man gave him a high five, which triggered his memories. High Five Ghost had flashbacks from when he was a baby, when he was a teenager, and from episodes like My Mom, Fuzzy Dice, and Rage Against the TV. He rose into the air as his real memories returned. Everyone cheered. The 6 employees then signed the document. The group headed back to Exit 9B to find Benson and get his signature. When they arrived at the construction site, workers captured them. The workers put bags over their heads, knocked them out, and transported them to the freeway. When the park workers woke up and the bags were removed, they discovered they had been buried neck-deep in cement on the middle of the freeway. They could not move or escape. The bearded man confronted them and explained they were the final components needed for Exit 9B's completion. When the park workers questioned his actions, something shocking happened. The bearded man's head flew off his body, revealing he was actually a floating head just like Garrett Bobby Ferguson. The head revealed himself to be Garrett Bobby Ferguson Jr., son of the original GBF, who Mordecai and Rigby defeated in the High Score episode. GBF Jr. explained the entire Exit 9B project was part of his plot for revenge against Mordecai and Rigby. They had defeated his father and caused him to explode. Mordecai asked if this was about beating his father's record. GBF Jr. said it was not about records. It was about them blowing up his father. By destroying everything Mordecai and Rigby held dear, GBF Jr. hoped to make his father proud. GBF Jr. announced that when his freeway was complete, it would be a gateway to the fiery center of the earth. Then his dad, along with everyone else the park workers had ever destroyed, would come back from beyond the grave to destroy everything they held dear. He laughed as the gang gasped in shock. GBF Jr. announced it was time to present Exit 9B. The last part of the freeway was slotted into place. This triggered a pair of sphere-ended poles on each side of the freeway. The poles zapped the dark cloud that had been hovering over the park for 2 months. The cloud transformed into a glowing portal. Many dozens of villains from previous episodes began walking out of the portal. The park workers watched in horror as their old enemies emerged. The villains who returned included the zombies and Howard Fightington from Gravesites, the Night Owl, the Urge, Giant Susan from Benson Be Gone, Broseph Chilaxton from Cool Bikes, Darthon the Game Store Manager, Party Pete, the Stag Man, Destroyer of Worlds from Just Set Up the Chairs, the No Rules Man, the Summertime Song, the Hammer, the Blonde Men, the Hot Dogs, the Duck Collector, Skull Punch, and the Master Prank Caller. All of them had been defeated or killed in previous episodes, but now they were back. The villains stopped marching. A giant head appeared from the portal. It was none other than Garrett Bobby Ferguson himself. Mordecai could not believe what he was seeing. GBF Sr. announced they should get ready for a universe serving of revenge. GBF Jr. called out father, and GBF Sr. responded son. Both of them grew arms and legs, their bodies forming from nothing. The heroes reacted in disgust. GBF Sr. hugged GBF Jr. and told him he was looking good. GBF Jr. thanked his father. He asked what they should say to showing these park scum the meaning of revenge. The Urge cracked his knuckles and said he was going to enjoy this. A hot dog declared, "These cowards die tonight." Just as the situation seemed hopeless, Skips whistled loudly. Suddenly, allies of the park workers began arriving. Death appeared, the same Grim Reaper who had made bets with park workers in previous episodes. Gary descended in his flying car. Tecmo the Cyborg arrived. The God of Basketball came. The Guardians of Eternal Youth showed up. The Baby Ducks were there, along with the Lemon Chef. All of these characters had helped the park workers in past adventures. The Guardians of Eternal Youth fired lasers from their rattles at the cement. The beams broke apart the cement prison, freeing the 6 buried park workers. They climbed out of the holes but immediately felt worried. They were completely outnumbered. The villain army was massive compared to their small group of allies. Mordecai gave a speech about how he was not going to give up everything he cared about. Instead, they would fight. Everyone prepared for battle. GBF Jr. released the zombies from Gravesites as the first wave. The park workers and their allies fought the zombies using freeway construction equipment. Tecmo commandeered a wrecking ball and smashed most of the zombies back and off the freeway ramp. Many zombies fell, and the Wilhelm scream could be heard. After wiping out most of the zombie horde, GBF Jr. ordered a full charge. GBF Sr., the Night Owl, the Hot Dogs, and many other villains ran at the park employees. A massive hand-to-hand battle broke out. The protagonists and antagonists fought each other with crude weapons and construction materials. A blonde man tried to punch Mordecai, but Mordecai knocked him out. The God of Basketball engaged in a fistfight with the Hammer. While God of Basketball was landing punches, the No Rules Man hit him in the back with a pole. Then the Hammer delivered an uppercut that sent God of Basketball flying toward Mordecai and Rigby, knocking him unconscious. The Baby Ducks and Lemon Chef battled the Destroyer of Worlds and Giant Susan. The battle was intense and chaotic. During the fight, Mordecai told Rigby they had to find Benson so they could get him to sign the papers. They searched through the battlefield, but could not find him. Suddenly, Benson appeared driving a giant digger. He was still brainwashed and working for GBF Jr. Benson tried to crush Mordecai and Rigby with the digger. They jumped into a golf cart and escaped, with Benson chasing them in the massive construction vehicle.
Mordecai and Rigby tried desperately to restore Benson's memory. They began doing their signature actions to trigger his memories. They ham-boned, shouted their catchphrases, said, "Not setting up the chairs next time," and yelled their signature, "Woo!" One trigger was not enough. Benson mentally tried to fight back against the brainwashing, but GBF Jr.'s control was too strong. Mordecai and Rigby had to resort to multiple catchphrases and signature moments. Finally, Benson began having flashbacks. He saw memories from Just Set Up the Chairs, Fortune Cookie, Weekend at Benson's, Think Positive, Brain Eraser, Prank Callers, Excellent, and Busted Cart. The memories flooded back. Benson's eyes cleared. He returned to his normal state and stopped chasing Mordecai and Rigby. Benson finally signed the document. The gang thought they had won. However, GBF Jr. pointed out there was one missing employee. Thomas had started working that very day, which meant he was technically a park employee who needed to sign. GBF Jr. threatened to erase Thomas's memories with his laser blaster unless Mordecai handed over the document. Mordecai appeared to give in to the demand and handed GBF Jr. a folder. GBF Jr. ordered Thomas to bring him some coffee. Thomas walked up with the coffee cup. Instead of handing it over, Thomas threw the hot coffee in GBF Jr.'s face. GBF Jr. screamed in pain and anger. He kicked Thomas over the edge of the freeway ramp. Thomas fell toward the ground far below. Benson swooped down in Gary's flying car and managed to save Thomas at the last second, catching him before he hit the ground. GBF Jr. prepared to tear up the document. He gathered all the villains around and held up what he thought was the contract. One of the blonde men looked confused and asked if that was a drawing of GBF Jr. with a butt for a face. GBF Jr. looked at the paper and realized he had been tricked. It was a fake. Mordecai called out, "Hey, losers!" from below. The flying car rose up from beneath the freeway with Thomas clinging to the edge of the trunk. Rigby announced they should have checked the fine print when they switched the contract right in front of GBF Jr.'s face. GBF Jr. and GBF Sr. both screamed, "No!" Thomas signed the last missing spot on the real document. The paper glowed yellow around his signature. The contract took off into midair and flew directly into the portal. The portal began closing. The freeway started to crumble and crack. All the villains were sucked back toward the portal, pulled back to the underworld where they came from. Bits of destroyed freeway were pulled in as well. GBF Sr. looked at GBF Jr. with disappointment. Just before they were both sucked into the portal, GBF Sr. told his son that he had broken the universe record for disappointing his father. Both Garrett Bobby Fergusons exploded and were sent through the portal along with all the other villains. The portal closed completely. Exit 9B disintegrated. The park was restored back to normal, as if the last 2 months had never happened. After the crisis was over, Thomas asked if this kind of thing happened often. The park workers assured him that yes, it did happen regularly. As everyone else left to fix the damage and clean up, Thomas received a call from his mother. Earlier, he had told her he was going to quit the internship. Now Thomas told her that, despite what he said before, he did not want to quit. He felt working at the park was going to be really cool. The episode received a total of 3.047 million viewers, which was a series record at the time. Exit 9B was the first episode of Regular Show's 4th season and aired on October 1st, 2012. It is considered one of the best episodes in the entire series. The episode brought back almost every villain from the first 3 seasons in one massive battle, created an epic continuity showcase, and introduced Thomas as a permanent character who would later be revealed as a Russian spy named Nikolai. What makes this episode's lore so fascinating is the 2-month gap. For 60 days, the park workers lived completely different lives. Skips fixed cars and had no memory of his immortality or Mona. Pops guided tourists through butterflies instead of working as a park manager. Muscle Man taught physics instead of doing maintenance work. These were not just disguises.
Their memories were completely erased and rewritten. They genuinely believed these were their real lives and identities. The psychological horror of this situation gets overlooked. Every friendship, every shared experience, every memory they had together was gone. When Pops met Skips at the auto shop, he was meeting a complete stranger. When Muscle Man almost got hit by Pop's car, he had no idea this was his best friend. These people who had worked together and been through countless supernatural adventures together no longer knew each other existed. The document from City Hall represented the only legal way to stop Exit 9B. Making the park a historical site meant it would be illegal to build a freeway there. But this required every employee's signature, which is why GBF Jr.'s plan almost worked. He had erased everyone's memories, making it seemingly impossible to gather all the signatures. The only reason Mordecai and Rigby escaped was because they used the time machine at the exact right moment. GBF Jr.'s revenge plot was methodical and cruel. He did not just want to kill Mordecai and Rigby. He wanted to destroy everything they held dear first. He erased their friends' memories, demolished their workplace, built a gateway to hell on top of it, and summoned every enemy they had ever defeated to destroy them. He forced them to watch as their brainwashed boss tried to kill them. The plan failed only because Thomas, on his first day, had the courage to throw coffee in a floating head's face and trust that Mordecai and Rigby had a plan. The portal to the underworld confirms that when villains died in regular show, they actually went to some form of afterlife. The fiery center of the earth served as a hell where defeated enemies waited. GBF Jr. built Exit 9B as a literal exit from this underworld, allowing the dead to walk among the living again. When Thomas signed the document, the legal designation as a historical site somehow had enough power to close this portal and send everyone back, suggesting laws in the regular show universe have metaphysical properties. The episode shows that even in death, GBF Sr. expected greatness from his son and was disappointed when GBF Jr. failed. Despite building a freeway, erasing memories, demolishing the park, opening a portal to hell, and bringing back dozens of villains, GBF Jr. still broke the universe record for disappointing his father. This adds a tragic element to GBF Jr.'s character. Everything he did was to make his father proud, and the last words he heard before being sucked back to hell were that he was a disappointment. Exit 9B represents the moment regular show proved it could handle epic storytelling. Almost every villain returned. Memories were erased and restored. A massive battle occurred with dozens of characters. The park was destroyed and rebuilt. A new character was introduced who would become important to future plot lines. And it all happened in 23 minutes on Thomas's first day of work. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the baby ducks, the geese, and the forgotten space war over the park. The baby ducks, the geese, and the forgotten space war over the park. Most regular show. Fans remember the baby ducks as cute little characters who could transform into a giant muscular man with a duck head. What gets forgotten is that these 4 baby ducks were responsible for multiple planetary scale destructions, fought in an intergalactic space war over toy merchandising rights, and became pilots of increasingly powerful mech suits that eventually destroyed Earth itself. The Baby Ducks storyline spans 3 major episodes and represents one of the most escalating conflicts in regular show history. The Baby Ducks first appeared in the Season 2 episode, A Bunch of Baby Ducks. Mordecai and Rigby were tasked with cleaning the park fountain. After they drained the fountain, they discovered 4 baby ducks alone inside. The ducks were small, with large black eyes, orange beaks and feet, and yellow feathers. When Mordecai and Rigby removed them from the fountain, the baby ducks immediately imprinted on Rigby. They would not leave him alone and started copying his every move. Benson discovered the baby ducks and told Mordecai and Rigby they had to clean up the fountain and get rid of the ducks. Mordecai and Rigby took the ducks to a pet shelter, hoping someone would adopt them. However, when a dog at the shelter threatened the ducks, they demonstrated incredible karate chopping abilities. They karate chopped the dog, then karate chopped a table with a glass tank containing a snake. The snake was knocked out cold.
The shelter did not accept them after this display.
Mordecai and Rigby returned to the park and decided to play video games. The baby ducks joined in and beat Rigby 3 times in a row at the game.
The ducks were skilled video game players, despite being babies.
They also started using Mordecai and Rigby's catchphrases, saying, "Ooh," and humph. Mordecai suggested maybe they should keep the ducks, but changed the topic when Benson showed up. Benson asked if they finished cleaning the fountain.
When he found out they had not, he told them to finish cleaning and find someone to take the ducks or they would be fired.
Mordecai and Rigby made flyers advertising the baby ducks.
While they waited in front of the house, a creepy man in a truck drove up. This was the duck collector.
He was interested in the ducks, but Mordecai and Rigby refused to let him take them because he looked extremely suspicious.
Pops came out of the house to tell Mordecai and Rigby they had a phone call.
The call was from the duck's mother. She wanted her babies back. Rigby initially did not want to give the ducks away.
Mordecai pointed out they did not know anything about raising ducks,
and Rigby could not even feed himself, so how would he feed the ducks? Rigby admitted he had not fed them at all yet. The mother duck said she would arrive in a few minutes.
Mordecai and Rigby went back outside.
They saw the duck collector loading the baby ducks into his cooler. He had kidnapped them. Mordecai and Rigby chased after him. Mordecai slipped and fell into the kiddie pool. Rigby jumped on the truck's windshield but got thrown to the ground. The duck collector drove away with the baby ducks trapped in his cooler. The mother duck arrived and found Mordecai and Rigby.
When they explained what happened, she let them ride on her back so they could catch up to the duck collector.
The mother duck flew them close enough to get onto the truck.
During their struggle with the duck collector,
the truck flipped over and crashed directly into the park fountain, completely destroying it. Mordecai, Rigby, and the baby ducks got out of the truck. The duck collector kicked Mordecai into a tree. The mother duck flew in to attack the duck collector by pecking his head, but he punched her to the ground. The baby ducks watched in horror. When Rigby approached the duck collector to fight him, the duck collector drew a sword from his cane and threatened Rigby with it. Rigby backed away, whimpering in fear. The baby ducks saw their mother and friends in peril.
Their eyes shone red in fury.
Suddenly, all 4 baby ducks transformed. They merged together and became a giant buff man with a duck's head. This form was called the hyperduck.
The hyperduck had white feathers on its face, a muscular human body,
and wore jeans and black shoes. The scenery had a slight orange tinge during the transformation. The hyperduck shouted, "Step off!" His hand engulfed in flames.
He karate chopped the duck collector in half.
A huge explosion occurred, creating a mushroom cloud. The duck collector was killed instantly. The hyperduck transformed back into the 4 baby ducks, who chirped casually as if nothing had happened.
Rigby declared the ducks were so cool. The baby ducks thanked Mordecai and Rigby for reuniting them with their mom and for taking care of them.
Then they left with their mother. Benson showed up and saw the destroyed fountain.
The truck had crashed into it, and the entire area was in ruins.
Benson, who may have seen the entire battle, just walked away without saying a word to Mordecai and Rigby.
This was the baby ducks' first appearance and established their ability to transform into a powerful fusion form.
The baby ducks returned in Season 4's episode, A Bunch of Full-Grown Geese.
The episode began with Mordecai, Rigby, and Pops making a sandwich at the park's lake.
They rapped while assembling the hoagie sandwich. After they finished making it, a gang of 4 vicious geese showed up.
These were Canada geese who were extremely territorial and aggressive.
The geese terrorized everyone at the lake, reducing Pops to tears and ruining their lunch. Mordecai and Rigby told Benson about the geese situation. Benson said he knew a couple of guys who would take care of the job. When Mordecai asked who they were, Benson casually stated it was Mordecai and Rigby themselves.
Mordecai protested,
but Benson threatened to fire them if they did not get rid of the geese. The geese had clearly traumatized Mordecai, Rigby, and Pops, but Benson did not care.
Mordecai and Rigby tried to scare the geese away using towels and other methods.
Nothing worked.
When they returned to Benson's office to explain the geese were too dangerous, Rigby called Benson out for his constant threats. Rigby said Benson was all talk and never actually fired them. This was Rigby's berserk button. Benson completely lost it and chased Mordecai and Rigby out of his office in a rage. Mordecai and Rigby had no choice but to deal with the geese themselves. They remembered the baby ducks and decided to call them for help. The baby ducks arrived at the park and were happy to see Mordecai and Rigby again. However, the geese were not normal animals. When confronted, the geese's eyes started glowing. They spoke in a voice of the Legion, revealing they were supernatural beings. The geese wanted to claim the park as their own personal territory. The geese attacked. A battle began between the baby ducks and the geese. The song "The Touch" by Stan Bush started playing, the same song from the Transformers animated movie. The baby ducks transformed into their hyperduck form, but the geese also had transformation abilities. The 4 geese merged together and became a giant robotic entity with 4 goose heads, similar to King Ghidorah. This form was called Mega Geese. The battle escalated. Mordecai and Rigby equipped the hyperduck with items from past episodes. They used Mordecai's fanny pack and immunity sword from But I Have a Receipt, Rigby's cut-up jeans from Death Punchies, the power keyboard from the episode of the same name, Playco Arm Boy from Over the Top, Radicola from Party Pete, Mordecai and Rigby's video game system, the basketball shoes from Slam Dunk, Rigby's I'm Excellent net hat, and the Maximum glove from Video Game Wizards. With all this equipment combined, the Hyperduck transformed into an upgraded form called Hyperduck Extreme. Mordecai and Rigby became pilots inside the Hyperduck Extreme. The transformation sequence resembled those from Voltron and Power Rangers franchises. The battle between Hyperduck Extreme and Mega Geese became massive and destructive. The Hyperduck Extreme put its arms in a plus sign shape and fired an energy beam, similar to Ultraman's signature move. The battle destroyed large portions of the park. Eventually, the Hyperduck Extreme defeated Mega Geese. The giant duck hand karate chopped the geese formation, killing all 4 geese. The park was left in ruins from the fight. Benson showed up and immediately started scolding Mordecai, Rigby, and the baby ducks for the mess they made. The mother duck arrived, annoyed and infuriated at Benson. She called him out for not appreciating the fact that Mordecai, Rigby, and the baby ducks had just saved the park, and possibly the entire world, by defeating the geese. She scolded Benson for being ungrateful and for yelling at her children. Benson felt ashamed, realizing she was right. He apologized to them and left sad and gloomy. Mordecai, Rigby, Mother Duck, and the baby ducks celebrated their victory. The episode ended with pictures of them hanging out in different places, showing they remained friends. This episode established the geese as the arch enemies of the baby ducks, and showed that both groups could transform into giant mech-like beings. The episode received a nomination for Outstanding Short Format Animated Program at the 65th Primetime Creative Arts Emmy Awards. The third and final major Baby Ducks episode was the Season 6 special called Brilliant Century Duck Crisis Special. This was a 30-minute episode that aired on April 9th, 2015. The episode began with an anime-themed opening showing scenes from past episodes. The entire special was an affectionate parody of anime and tokusatsu, specifically giant robot shows like Gundam and Power Rangers. Mordecai and Rigby were watching Carter and Briggs on television when a Playco commercial interrupted. Playco was advertising their latest Carter and Briggs action figures. Mordecai and Rigby had bought the figures and discovered they were cheaply made and not worth $15. They demonstrated the poor quality by playing with them. Parts broke off and landed in Benson's nearby food. Benson yelled at them for ruining his meal. Pops came running into the house crying. He talked about a prehistoric creature that had attacked him outside. Skips identified it as a cassowary, a dangerous and aggressive bird. Benson told Mordecai and Rigby it was their responsibility to get rid of the cassowary, or they were fired. After unsuccessfully trying to chase it away, Mordecai and Rigby called the baby ducks for help. The baby ducks arrived, but so did a limousine. The owner of Playco and his assistant emerged. The baby ducks reacted negatively to them
explaining that Playco had been pressuring them for months to sign a toy contract.
The Playco owner wanted Mordecai and Rigby to sign the contract as well, giving their likenesses for action figures representing the Hyperduck Extreme Fusion mode, since Mordecai and Rigby were pilots inside it. Mordecai, Rigby, and the baby ducks all refused. The Playco owner opened a briefcase, revealing a single $100 bill as a bribe. They still refused. The Playco owner seemed to understand their hesitation and offered to show them prototypes of the toys. The prototypes were poorly made and confirmed why they should not sign. The Playco businessmen revealed their trap. They had planted the cassowary knowing Mordecai and Rigby would call the baby ducks for help. The cassowary was part of Playco's plan. The Playco businessmen threatened that if the group did not sign the contract, they would use more extreme measures. A massive battle began. The baby ducks transformed into Hyperduck Extreme, with Mordecai and Rigby as pilots. The geese returned, but this time they were working for Playco. The geese had been killed in their previous appearance, but somehow came back to life. They combined with the robotic cassowary to form an even more powerful mech called Moto Goosawary X. The battle escalated into space. The park workers all joined the fight, each becoming part of the Hyperduck formation. The form upgraded into Hyperduck Extreme Park variant, with all park employees as pilots. The Moto Goosawary X proved too powerful. Carter and Briggs showed up to help, angry about their own crappy toy line. They combined with the Hyperduck along with Andy, the baby duck's long-lost teenage brother. This created Hyperduck Ultimate Fury Gigawing. The battle reached planetary scales. The moon was shattered to pieces during the fight. The Playco businessmen used the moon's remains as armor, attaching limousines to create Lunar Goosawary X Omega Warrior mode. The Lunar Goosawary X had the moon incorporated into its body as defensive armor. It launched scramble missiles and fired a massive Nega missile from its chest. During the battle, Rigby noticed something important in the contract. While the contract portrayed the baby ducks as heroes, it portrayed the geese as villains. The geese read this and became offended. They had been tricked by Playco into being portrayed as bad guys simply because of their dark color scheme. Angry at being deceived, the geese changed sides and betrayed Playco. The geese detached from Lunar Goosawary X and merged with the Hyperduck. This created the ultimate final form, Hyperduck Kingbreaker White Lightning. This was the strongest form of the baby ducks in the entire series. Mordecai and Rigby pulled out their guitars and played them. The Hyperduck began to energize a massive ball of energy. A narrator announced that Mordecai, Rigby, and their friends summoned the Galaxy Blade from a distant moon. The Galaxy Blade flew from a temple on a distant moon, traveled through space, flew directly through Mars, which was completely destroyed by its passage, and landed in the Hyperduck Kingbreaker White Lightning's hands. The Galaxy Blade was capable of crunching through Jupiter and overshadowing the greater cosmos in size. The Hyperduck used the Galaxy Blade to cut through the Playco contract, destroying it. The contract had been so durable that earlier forms could not even make a dent in it, but the Galaxy Blade sliced it apart. With the Hyperduck's arm locked onto the Goosawary X's remaining parts, they flew down back toward Earth. The Hyperduck Kingbreaker White Lightning shouted, "Step off!" just like the original Hyperduck form. It performed a massive elbow drop, slamming the Playco businessmen and their remaining mech directly into the park. The impact was catastrophic. The explosion destroyed the park house, Cheezer's restaurant, the ocean, the entire city, and the entire Earth itself. The planet was devastated. All life on Earth was wiped out. Despite this complete planetary destruction, the park members were somehow oblivious to what they had done. They celebrated their victory, happy that Carter and Briggs were finally freed from their Playco contract. The baby ducks and geese were now allies instead of enemies. Andy had to leave for a hot date on the moon Europa. One of the geese thanked the baby ducks, acknowledging that while they were mortal enemies, this one time they were comrades, and that was pretty cool.
The Placo businessmen were revealed to still be alive despite Earth's destruction.
They climbed out of a crater and admitted defeat on the toy deal. However, they immediately asked if the group would rather sign a video game contract instead. The entire group, having learned nothing, accepted the video game deal without hesitation. The episode showed the park members as if everything was perfectly normal. The narrator declared it was just another ordinary day at the park. The Earth being completely destroyed was never brought up again in any future episodes. The next episode showed Earth perfectly fine, as if nothing had happened. This was an example of negative continuity, where massive events had no lasting consequences. The Brilliant Century Duck Crisis special represents the peak of absurdity in the Baby Ducks storyline. What started as 4 cute ducks copying Rigby's karate chops escalated over 3 episodes into a space war that destroyed multiple planets and ultimately Earth itself. The baby ducks went from being found in a fountain to piloting mechs capable of wielding swords larger than Jupiter. The geese went from terrorizing a park lake to becoming cosmic-level threats working for corporate interests. The forgotten lore here is the sheer scale of destruction. Mars was completely destroyed when the Galaxy Blade flew through it. The moon was shattered to pieces and used as mech armor. Jupiter was referenced as something the Galaxy Blade could crunch through. Earth was obliterated by an elbow drop. All of this happened because of a dispute over toy merchandising rights and poorly made action figures. The Baby Ducks storyline also shows how Regular Show handled escalation. The first battle destroyed a park fountain. The second battle destroyed large portions of the park. The third battle destroyed the entire planet. Each encounter raised the stakes exponentially. What remained forgotten is that these 4 baby ducks are canonically responsible for more destruction than almost any other characters in Regular Show, including killing multiple villains and wiping out all life on Earth. The relationship between the baby ducks and geese is also unique. They went from being mortal enemies who killed each other to temporary allies fighting together against corporate greed. The geese were killed, somehow came back to life, worked for Placo, realized they were being portrayed as villains unfairly, switched sides mid-battle, and fused with their former enemies to create the ultimate mech. This bizarre alliance shows that even ancient rivals can unite when faced with something they both hate. In this case, poorly made toys and exploitative contracts. The space war over the park represents Regular Show at its most absurd. A workplace sitcom about 2 slackers who avoid work became a show about intergalactic mech battles between waterfowl over intellectual property rights. The baby ducks transformed from cute mascots into planet-destroying superweapons. And somehow, after destroying Earth, everyone just moved on to signing a video game deal like nothing happened. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Next up we got Time Travel, Time Police, and the Park's Broken Timeline. Time Travel, Time Police, and the Park's Broken Timeline. Regular Show contains one of the most complicated and broken timelines in animated television history. The park experienced multiple time travel incidents that created paradoxes, alternate futures, and eventually a tornado capable of destroying all of existence. What most people forget is that the park's timeline was shattered across multiple episodes, eventually leading to a future where Mordecai became a cyborg, working for an evil volleyball coach to erase all of time itself. Father Time first appeared in the Season 2 episode, It's Time. This episode established that time travel exists in Regular Show, and that there is a cosmic entity who governs time itself. Father Time is the god of time, made entirely out of different types of clocks. He wears a purple hat resembling a king's crown. His face is a clock itself, and the 2 clock hands function as lips. He has a very deep voice and can materialize wherever he pleases. Father Time inhabits an unknown dimension that serves as his house. He mentions there is a living room with lots of invisible items. This dimension exists somewhere in space, shown as a flat surface where everything is invisible. Father Time has complete authority over time and can send people backward through time using creatures called time ponies. The incident that brought Father Time into the story began at the coffee shop.
Mordecai and Rigby watched a movie trailer for Zombie Dinner Party. Rigby revealed he already bought 2 tickets for opening night.
However, Mordecai could not go because he had 2 tickets to see Pajama Sisters 2 with Margaret. He was finally planning to ask her out. Rigby made a joke that caused Margaret to laugh. Mordecai became extremely jealous watching this interaction. His jealousy grew throughout the day. In his apartment, Mordecai grabbed all the clocks in the house and put them in the microwave. He microwaved all the clocks, which caused a dimensional portal to open. Rigby walked into the room, asking what Mordecai was doing. Mordecai, in his jealous rage, shoved Rigby off the microwave platform. Rigby fell through the dimensional portal screaming. Mordecai was immediately pulled through the portal as well. They both arrived at Father Time's dimension in space. Mordecai was horrified at what he had done. Father Time manifested and confronted Mordecai about his destructive behavior involving microwaved clocks. Mordecai apologized, but denied any harmful intentions. Father Time scolded Mordecai for not only wasting time, but also causing the demise of Rigby. Mordecai asked Father Time to revive Rigby. Father Time refused, explaining it was impossible because Rigby's body had turned into star stuff. Rigby was permanently dead. Mordecai was left to spend eternity at the end of time due to his jealousy. This led to an argument between Mordecai and Father Time, as Mordecai still denied being jealous. Father Time revealed Mordecai's true feelings through a mechanism called the Truth Hole. The Truth Hole showed a montage of Mordecai's jealous reactions to Rigby throughout the episode. Father Time advised Mordecai to confront his emotions. Despite his irritation, Father Time gave Mordecai a second chance, cautioning him against repeating his mistakes. Gratefully, Mordecai accepted the opportunity and rode a time pony back to where the episode began. Everything reset. Rigby was alive and well to Mordecai's relief. Rigby once again asked Mordecai to go with him to Zombie Dinner Party. This time, Mordecai agreed to go. He unsuccessfully tried to make a joke for Margaret. Rigby interrupted and made his joke, causing her to laugh again. Rigby saw Mordecai was jealous. At first, Mordecai denied this, but then stopped, and with a smile, stated he was maybe a little bit jealous, after realizing that time would repeat itself. This episode established that time could be reset, and that Father Time had the power to send people backward through time. It also showed that microwaving clocks could open portals to Father Time's dimension. This was the first instance of time manipulation in the park's history. The Season 3 finale episode Bad Kiss introduced actual time machines that Rigby purchased. Mordecai, Rigby, Margaret, and Eileen drove to the park after watching movies. When they arrived, Mordecai said he forgot his wallet in Margaret's car and went back to find it. Margaret showed up to help him look. They kissed. However, Margaret pushed Mordecai away because his breath smelled bad from a chili dog he ate earlier. Embarrassed, Mordecai grabbed Rigby and ran inside the house. Mordecai explained that he and Margaret were in the moment and they kissed, but his breath smelled bad and he would be embarrassed forever. Rigby pulled out a time machine that he bought for $15. The time machine looked like a small handheld device with buttons. Mordecai wanted to go back 15 minutes to stop himself from kissing Margaret, but the time machine did not work properly. They went back to when they were watching the movie. Rigby tried to get past Mordecai to give him breath mints, but it did not work. They continued going back in time until they got to Mordecai in the morning. They brought mourning Mordecai back to the present. Past Mordecai did not believe them when they explained what happened. He combed his hair, but did not brush his teeth. He even ate an extra onions chili dog off the ground after Rigby violently sabotaged the food truck. Past Mordecai took the time machine from them and went into the future to kiss Margaret himself. Rigby revealed he had a second time machine that he also bought. They started chasing past Mordecai through time using the second time machine. They traveled through different time periods from previous episodes trying to catch him. They visited several different times, including moments from earlier in the series. They finally captured past Mordecai at 11:55 when he was about to kiss Margaret. Rigby took past Mordecai to the present. Present Mordecai and Rigby destroyed both time machines. This caused everything that just happened between the first time travel and the machine's destruction
to have never happened. Time was set back to where Mordecai was in Margaret's car. However, Mordecai did not want to have a bad kiss. Realizing his breath was still bad, he abruptly found his wallet and stopped Margaret mid-kiss. They got out of the car to join Rigby and Eileen. The episode ended with them entering the house, leaving Mordecai without a kiss from Margaret. The kiss technically never happened in the timeline. This episode established that cheap time machines could be purchased, and that destroying time machines would undo everything that happened while using them. The Season 5 episode, A Skips in Time, introduced the Time-Nado, which would become central to the park's broken timeline. The episode began with Tecmo inside his storm-chasing car, listening to a radio emergency alert about a tornado. Tecmo got on top of his car to take pictures of the huge tornado. He saw a hot air balloon in the tornado with someone in it. At the park, Benson told everyone to get into the tornado shelter before the tornado arrived. The hot air balloon crashed into the trees, and a person fell to the ground. They brought the unconscious stranger into the shelter. When the person woke up, Skips revealed a shocking truth. The stranger was him from the 1700s. His name was Walks, from before Skips changed his name. Walks explained he was storm chasing with his friend Samson in the 1700s using hot air balloons. Walks flew too close to the tornado and got sucked in. That was the last thing he remembered before waking up in the present. Skips explained that if they did not return Walks to the past, a whole chain of events would never happen. Then the timeline would catch up, and Skips would age really fast and die. Muscle Man knew a guy with a time machine and went to buy one. However, the person who sold time machines had apparently traveled back in time, met his dad, caused his parents to never meet, and faded from existence due to the grandfather paradox. Muscle Man returned empty-handed. Skip said the only other way to get Walks back to his time was to catch up to the tornado. Only Tecmo and his storm-chasing equipment could do it. Tecmo burst in, revealing that when he saw the tornado, he knew to come straight to the park. The tornado was actually a time-nado. Tecmo was with Walks when he got caught in the time-nado in the 1700s. It was the baddest storm they ever chased. Now it was back. Mordecai, Rigby, Skips, Walks, and Tecmo got into Tecmo's storm-chasing car to catch up with the time-nado. Tecmo's car was a modified DeLorean with advanced storm-chasing equipment. They approached the time-nado and could see many objects revolving around it. Tecmo activated Phase 2, which deployed a hot air balloon from the car. The plan was for Walks to get in his balloon, while Mordecai and Rigby eased him into the core of the time-nado, where he would find a portal home. As they prepared, Walks tried to smuggle pizza pouches back to the past with him. Mordecai and Rigby chased after him, fell into the hot air balloon basket with him, and nearly got sucked into the past. Mordecai and Rigby were still in the tornado when another portal opened, this time showing Mordecai and Rigby in high school. They were both in danger of falling through the portal that would take them back to high school when Tecmo's car flew in and picked them up. They flew back to the park. This was important foreshadowing. The time-nado contained portals to different time periods, including Mordecai and Rigby's high school days. This episode revealed that the time-nado had existed since at least the 1700s. It was a natural phenomenon that could trap people and send them through time. However, the true origin of the time-nado would be revealed in Regular Show the Movie. Regular Show the Movie revealed the complete truth about the park's broken timeline. The film showed a dystopian future where time itself was being erased. In the distant future, Rigby led a rebellion squadron consisting of Benson, Skips, High Five Ghost, Muscle Man, and Pops against an evil cyborg named Mr. Ross. Ross was erasing time with his army and the time-nado. When Rigby and his team reached the base of the time-nado, where the temporal crystal was located, the whole team except Benson and Rigby were shot down. Ross's right-hand man called a ceasefire. It was revealed to be future Mordecai, who had become a cyborg with a robotic hand. Future Mordecai told Rigby and Benson to stand down, which they refused. Mr. Ross appeared and revealed that Mordecai and Rigby created the time-nado. Future Mordecai confirmed he knew what Rigby did in high school and would never forgive him. Benson sacrificed himself to help Rigby get to a time ship. Just as Rigby was about to travel back in time, future Mordecai showed up and aimed his laser gun at Rigby. Future Mordecai said he had to think about his career and that he and Rigby were not friends and had not been in a long time. When Rigby's ship was ready for time travel, Mordecai warned that if he pressed the button, he would shoot him. Rigby told him to go ahead. Mordecai shot Rigby as he pressed the time travel button. Rigby also shot Mordecai as his ship took off. The time ship traveled to the present and crashed into the park. Future Rigby was dying from the gunshot wound. He told present Mordecai and Rigby that when they were in high school, they created a time machine that backfired and was destroyed, but created the Time-Nado. The Time-Nado was a tornado that could travel through space and time. They got expelled for blowing up the science lab. Before dying, future Rigby revealed that Mordecai shot him, shocking everyone. Future Rigby told present Rigby he would soon have to tell Mordecai a secret that would help save the universe, even if it cost him their friendship. When questioned for details, Mordecai explained they built the time machine because Rigby got into their dream college, College University, but Mordecai did not. This was a lie. The truth was the opposite. Rigby actually got rejected from College University. The rejection letter was brutally honest and insulting. It said if Rigby could even understand the letter at all, he was rejected. Even Benson winced at how harsh the letter was. Rigby's mother told him about a community college in Mexico that would accept him. She said it was the only school that would accept him. Rigby refused to go to college without Mordecai. Not wanting to lose his best friend, Rigby went to Mordecai's house before Mordecai arrived home. He found out Mordecai was accepted to College University. Rigby forged a rejection letter on Mordecai's computer, so Mordecai would think he got rejected, while Rigby got accepted. Mordecai arrived home just in time for Rigby to put the forged letter in his mail slot. Mordecai saw Rigby holding his real acceptance package and believed Rigby got accepted. Mordecai was devastated by his fake rejection. He and Rigby attempted to finish their science teacher Mr. Ross's time machine. Mordecai wanted to go back in time and tell his past self to get better grades so he could get accepted. They used weapons-grade plutonium in the time machine. The time machine exploded and destroyed the entire science lab. The explosion created the Time-Nado. Both Mordecai and Rigby were expelled from high school. Mr. Ross was held responsible for having plutonium and a time machine in his classroom. He was fired and sent to prison. Rigby lost his scholarship to College University. Mordecai ended up going to junior college. Rigby crashed with Mordecai in his dorm. Mordecai eventually dropped out of college. They both loafed around for a while before getting the job at the park. The park employees used future Rigby's time ship to travel back to high school. They damaged the engines during time travel. Skips, Muscle Man, and High Five Ghost stayed behind to fix the engines. Mordecai, Rigby, Benson, and Pops went to the high school to destroy the time machine before it could explode. Mr. Ross was their science teacher and volleyball coach. He was angry at Rigby for costing his volleyball team the state championship. The employees met their past selves and convinced past Rigby to make a model volcano for his extra credit assignment instead of working on the time machine. They destroyed the original time machine. However, temporal ruptures began appearing. Rigby discovered that past Mordecai and past Rigby were heading to the high school to finish a second time machine that future Mr. Ross had planted. The employees raced back to the science lab, but were held up by Mr. Ross and future Mordecai. Past Mordecai and past Rigby finished the second time machine and it exploded, creating the Time-Nado exactly as history recorded. Mr. Ross forced Rigby to admit the truth by threatening to kill Mordecai with a volleyball bomb. Rigby had to read his real rejection letter aloud in front of everyone. He confessed that he never got into College University, but Mordecai did, and he faked Mordecai's rejection letter to maintain their friendship. The park crew winced in shock from how harsh the rejection letter was. Future Mordecai, having a change of heart, jumped into the volleyball bomb's path to save present Mordecai. The bomb hit future Mordecai in the chest, creating a hole in him. He died shortly after. Before dying, future Mordecai gave present Mordecai his time ship and told him to patch things up with Rigby. He expressed regret over the corrupt path he chose. Present Mordecai was enraged at Rigby's duplicity. He told Rigby he was not his friend, that all Rigby ever done was hold him back, and that Rigby was the reason Mordecai was stuck in a dead-end job. This completely shattered Rigby. Heartbroken, Rigby ran off with the time ship. Rigby tried to commit suicide by flying the time ship into the sun. Before he could, he encountered Father Time. Father Time was falling apart due to the Time-nado destroying the fabric of time itself. Father Time convinced Rigby to head to the future and apologize to Mordecai. At the Time-nado space station, Mr. Ross intercepted both Rigby and Mordecai at the temporal crystal core. With Tecmo's help using a laser sword, they managed to decapitate Mr. Ross. Rigby and Mordecai restored their friendship. They used plutonium from Mordecai's time ship to destroy the Time-nado by throwing it into the temporal crystal. They then traveled back and convinced past Rigby to apologize to past Mr. Ross before he was arrested. This ended the feud between them. However, Mr. Ross still went to prison for the explosion. The timeline was partially repaired, but the damage had already been done. What makes the park's timeline truly broken is that multiple contradictory time travel incidents occurred. Father Time reset time in its time. The time machines were destroyed in Badkiss, undoing events. The Time-nado was created, destroyed, and paradoxically existed for centuries before its creation. Teenage Skips traveled from the 1700s through the Time-nado that was not created until Mordecai and Rigby's high school days. The timeline contains impossible loops. Mordecai and Rigby went back in time to prevent creating the Time-nado, but ended up ensuring it was created. Mr. Ross only planted the second time machine because he traveled through time using the Time-nado, but the Time-nado was created by the explosion he caused in the past. Future Mordecai became a cyborg and shot future Rigby, but this future was erased when they destroyed the Time-nado. The park exists in a timeline where multiple futures occurred simultaneously. There was a future where Mordecai became an evil cyborg. There was a future where everyone died fighting Mr. Ross. There was a future where time itself was being erased. All of these futures technically happened, and then were erased from existence. The most forgotten aspect of regular show's time travel lore is that the entire park should not exist. The events of the movie show that destroying the Time-nado erased the bad future, but Teenage Skips traveled through the Time-nado before it was destroyed, meaning some version of the Time-nado still exists in history. The park's timeline is a paradox wrapped in a loop tied around a contradiction. Time travel in regular show was not a fun adventure. It destroyed friendships, created monsters, sent people to prison, and nearly erased all of existence. The park's timeline is broken beyond repair, held together only by the fact that everyone decided to stop messing with time. Father Time himself was falling apart by the end. The park survived not because the timeline was fixed, but because they finally stopped breaking it. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Death, the Afterlife Arena, and the Cosmic Rules of Dying. In regular show, Death, the Afterlife Arena, and the Cosmic Rules of Dying. In regular show, regular show treats death differently than most animated series. Death is not an abstract concept, but an actual person with a family, a job, and very specific cosmic rules about how dying works. What most viewers forget is that the park exists in a universe with a fully functioning underworld, cosmic soul contracts, and a grim reaper who makes deals through arm wrestling and bowling matches. The rules of death in regular show are complicated, negotiable, and surprisingly specific. Death made his debut in the Season 2 episode Over the Top. He represents an undead skeleton-like figure with a slim body and greenish-white skin flaps. Several skin flaps segment his mandible from his upper jaw, which gives the illusion of a mustache and sideburns. Rigby once compared these to shredded Parmesan cheese. Death has brown, neck-length hair and empty eye sockets. Death's appearance is based on Motorhead vocalist and bassist Lemmy Kilmister. He speaks with a strong Cockney accent and has Lemmy's signature facial hair and moles. Death wears British biker clothes consisting of a black motorcycle jacket, a gray sleeveless shirt, and a torn hoodie around his neck. Both the shirt and hoodie scarcely hide his ribcage. When Death removes his jacket, his right arm is shown to be abnormally muscular. His left arm is average-sized, but his right arm is giant and extremely powerful. This muscular right arm was the arm he used to arm wrestle Skips. Death's lower body is dressed with a pair of blue jeans tied up with a taupe belt featuring a skull-shaped buckle. A small chain dangles from his left back pocket. On his feet, Death wears brown leather shoes with pointed tips. On occasion, Death wears sunglasses, a biker's helmet, and a knapsack. When on date night with his wife, Death wears a gray dress shirt and a black blazer. Death is one of the few characters in Regular Show to have 5 fingers instead of the usual 4. Skips is another character with 5 fingers. Death rides a motorcycle that can teleport to the underworld and back. He can also teleport in a blaze of fire without his motorcycle. Death came into existence in prehistory and has acted as the Grim Reaper for years, taking the souls of many whose time to die had come. As the Grim Reaper himself, Death is incredibly cruel, ruthless, and sadistic. He shows pleasure in collecting souls and enjoys seeing others in pain. When arm wrestling Skips for Rigby's soul, Death laughed at Skips struggling for his life. He also has a short temper, demonstrated when he threw the soul ball at Rigby instead of just handing it to him after Rigby won it fair and square. Despite these evil qualities, Death has many honorable traits. He always keeps his end of a deal no matter what happens. If he loses a wager, he honors the agreement completely. Death even gives praise to those he respects. He complimented Mordecai and Rigby as the best babysitters he ever had, which was significant given that previous babysitters for his son Thomas had all died. Death also deeply loves and cares for his wife and son. As the personification of Death itself, Death is extremely powerful. He is able to rival and hold an advantage over Skips in arm wrestling, which implies great strength considering Skips is one of the strongest characters in the show. Death has complete power over souls. He can absorb souls, manipulate them, store them in containers, and resurrect people by returning their souls to their bodies. Death teleports to the underworld and back via his motorcycle, which has a skull ornament on the front. He makes portals appear out of thin air that his motorcycle can drive through. These portals lead directly to the underworld. Death can also teleport himself in a blaze of fire without needing his motorcycle. He can manipulate souls to a considerable extent, demonstrated when he stored Muscle Man's soul inside a small amulet that fit in Rigby's hand. Death has been married to his wife for at least a year by the time of Dead at 8. His wife has 4 arms and appears to be some kind of demon or supernatural being. She wears elegant dresses when going out. Death and his wife go on anniversary dinners at restaurants, showing they have a normal romantic relationship despite being supernatural entities. Death has a son named Thomas. Thomas appears to be a baby in a diaper, but he is actually 300 years old. Thomas is voiced by Michael Dorn and has a deep, demonic voice. However, Thomas only speaks when his parents are not around. He pretends to be a normal baby who can only make baby noises when Death and his wife are present. Death has no idea that Thomas can talk, or that he is secretly evil and intelligent. Thomas has glowing red eyes when angry, and possesses various demonic powers. He can cause earthquakes when throwing tantrums. He can make things catch on fire through sheer rage. Thomas eats enormous amounts of sugar and cookies in single bites by using vacuum mouth suction. He is incredibly strong and destructive despite his baby appearance. Thomas has killed all of Death's previous babysitters. When Mordecai and Rigby babysat him in Dead at 8, Death was impressed they survived and did not die. Death's wife asked Mordecai and Rigby if they had experience taking care of paranormal children, indicating that supernatural children are known to be more dangerous than regular children in the underworld.
Death lives in the underworld in a place called Death's Manor. The manor is a large house with multiple rooms, including a library, kitchen, bedrooms, and a chandelier room. Death's refrigerator contains soul juice, goat's feet, and surprisingly, almond milk. Death owns books, including one titled The Hungry, Hungry, Soul-Sucking Deathworm, which is an evil pop-up book that summons an actual soul-eating worm when the last tab is pulled. The underworld has its own locations beyond Death's Manor. There is an underworld playground designed for demon children. This playground has fire, brimstone, and an overall atmosphere of hopelessness. It features dangerous equipment, including elder boy swings, that are much more extreme than normal swings. The underworld playground is populated by demon parents and their demon children, including a giant female praying mantis and her child. Death operates by very specific cosmic rules. He cannot simply take anyone's soul whenever he wants. There are conditions and requirements. Death can only take someone's soul if their time has come, they die naturally, or if they lose a wager or challenge to him. If someone's death is prevented, or if death loses a wager, he must honor that and cannot take the soul. The most important rule is that death always keeps his word. Every deal death makes is binding, and he follows through completely. When Skips defeated Death in arm wrestling, Death honored the deal immediately and resurrected Rigby without complaint, even though he had been trying to get Skip's immortal soul for years. When Mordecai and Rigby successfully babysat Thomas and got him to sleep before 8, Death freed Muscleman's soul from the amulet as promised. Death's favorite method of wagering for souls is through competitions and challenges. In Over the Top, he arm wrestled Skips for Rigby's soul. In Skips Strikes, Death formed a bowling team and wagered the entire park crew's souls against a soul ball in a bowling match. In Dead at 8, Death wagered Muscleman's soul against babysitting services. In Last Meal, Death attempted to take Muscleman's soul during a hot dog eating contest. The specific rules vary by challenge. For arm wrestling, it is straightforward. Whoever wins gets the soul. For the babysitting challenge in Dead at 8, the requirement was very specific. Mordecai and Rigby had to have Thomas asleep by the time Death and his wife returned home at 8. If Thomas was not asleep, Death would take Muscleman's soul. For the bowling match in Skip Strikes, it was a standard game where whichever team won would get the wager. Death can store souls in different containers. In Dead at 8, he stored Muscleman's entire soul inside a small amulet that could be worn around the neck or held in a hand. The amulet allowed Muscleman to remain conscious and aware while in soul form. Muscleman could see and hear everything happening around the amulet. He could speak to Mordecai and Rigby while trapped inside. In Skip Strikes, Death wagered a soul ball. The soul ball was a bowling ball filled with multiple souls. Rigby was extremely excited about winning the soul ball because he could rub it in people's faces as a trophy. The soul ball glowed and contained visible swirling souls inside it. Death kept the soul ball after his bowling team lost, then threw it hard at Rigby in anger instead of handing it over gently. Once someone dies, Death comes to collect their soul. However, resurrection is possible if someone makes a successful wager with Death, or if Death is defeated in a challenge. The resurrection process involves Death returning the soul to the body. In Over the Top, Death resurrected Rigby by spitting Rigby's soul directly into Rigby's mouth. Rigby immediately coughed and woke up alive. When Rigby was resurrected, he had large stitches visible on his back where Skips had killed him by slamming him through a table. The stitches showed that Rigby's body had been medically treated and sewn back together at the hospital before the resurrection. The soul could only return to a repaired body. Death mentioned that he has been trying to get Skip's immortal soul for years. Skip's immortality was granted by the Guardians of Eternal Youth, which greatly irritated Death. Death sees Skips as his biggest rival and has been waiting for an opportunity to claim Skip's soul. Every encounter between Death and Skips involves Death reminding Skips
that he will eventually have his immortal soul. The fact that Skips can die, but be resurrected infinitely due to his immortality, creates a loophole in the cosmic rules. If Skips ever loses a wager to Death, Death could finally claim the immortal soul he has been after for centuries. This is why Skips is extremely careful when dealing with Death, and only makes wagers when absolutely necessary to save someone else. Death's job is not limited to collecting souls. He has appeared in situations where he helps the park workers rather than threatening them. In Exit 9B, Death showed up to help fight the resurrected villains that Garrett Bobby Ferguson Jr. brought back. Death joined forces with the park crew, the Baby Ducks, and other allies to battle the massive army of past enemies. This showed that Death has a sense of cosmic balance and will fight against those who disrupt the natural order. In Guitar of Rock, Death helped the park workers retrieve Mr. Mellard's guitar from the underworld. This established that Death controls access to the underworld and can grant passage to living people who need to retrieve items or information from there. The underworld in Regular Show functions as both an afterlife realm and a storage location for things that have been lost or taken. In the end of Muscle Man, the park workers thought Death was coming to take Muscle Man's soul. However, Death was only there to deliver a ring to Muscle Man. The ring belonged to Muscle Man's aunt and was stored in the underworld. Death retrieved it so Muscle Man could use it to propose to Starla. This showed that Death sometimes acts as a courier between the living world and the underworld. Death has a running gag where he can foreshadow upcoming episodes. In Dead at 8, Death told Mordecai and Rigby that Muscle Man would die in a hot dog eating contest in the future. This foreshadowed the episode Last Meal, which occurred later in the series. In Guitar of Rock, Death foreshadowed future events as well. Death seems to have knowledge of future events, or at least strong intuition about how people will die. Thomas is one of the most dangerous characters in Regular Show, despite appearing to be a baby. He is 300 years old, but has been pretending to be a helpless infant his entire life. His parents have no idea he can speak, or that he is intelligent and evil. Thomas keeps up this charade perfectly, only revealing his true nature when his parents are not present. Thomas's voice is provided by Michael Dorn, who also voiced Lieutenant Worf in Star Trek. This gives Thomas a deep, commanding, intimidating voice that contrasts sharply with his baby appearance. Thomas speaks in complete sentences and has advanced vocabulary. He is manipulative and cruel, enjoying tormenting his babysitters. In Dead at 8, Thomas refused to go to sleep unless Mordecai and Rigby played with him. However, playtime with Thomas was extremely dangerous. He ripped apart his dolls violently, shot darts at Mordecai and Rigby, and nearly set the house on fire. When they tried to feed him, Thomas refused warm milk and instead ate an entire jar of cookies and a bag of sugar by inhaling them with vacuum suction. The sugar made him hyperactive, and he destroyed the kitchen. Thomas forced Mordecai and Rigby to read him a bedtime story from the Hungry, Hungry, Soul-Sucking Deathworm book. When they pulled the last picture tab, the soul-sucking deathworm came to life and tried to eat Muscle Man's soul from the amulet. Thomas actively tried to throw the amulet to the worm to feed it Muscle Man's soul. He found it entertaining to watch the worm destroy Death's house. Previous babysitters for Thomas all died. Death mentioned this casually, indicating it was a normal occurrence. Death was genuinely impressed that Mordecai and Rigby survived babysitting Thomas. The fact that they got him to sleep, even though it was because a chandelier fell on him and knocked him unconscious, made them the best babysitters Death ever had. In Playdate, Thomas appeared again when Mordecai was on a date with CJ. Death left Thomas with Mordecai and CJ, warning them Thomas was going through a phase. Thomas deliberately sabotaged Mordecai's date with CJ throughout the episode. He insisted on going to the underworld playground and caused chaos there. Thomas turned other underworld parents against Mordecai by making them think Mordecai was a bad person. Thomas's sole motivation was that CJ had insulted him earlier and he wanted revenge. The most forgotten aspect of Death in Regular Show is how cosmic and negotiable it is. Death is not an unstoppable force. He can be defeated, bargained with, and even befriended. The park workers have died and been resurrected multiple times through various means. Rigby alone has died at least 4 times in the series and come back each time. The underworld exists as a real physical place that living people can visit. It has infrastructure, playgrounds, restaurants, and residential areas. Demons and supernatural beings live there with their families and raise children. The underworld operates parallel to the living world, with its own society and rules. Death keeps meticulous records of when people will die. He knew Muscle Man would die in a hot dog eating contest before it happened. He showed up to collect Muscle Man's soul the moment Muscle Man's water slide accident occurred in Dead at 8. Death appears to know everyone's death date and arrival time, suggesting there is a cosmic schedule he follows. The soul itself is a tangible object in regular show. Souls can be removed from bodies, stored in containers, wagered in competitions, and physically returned. Souls remain conscious and aware when separated from their bodies. They can speak, see, and hear. The soul contains the entire essence and personality of the person. Death's relationship with the park workers evolved from antagonistic to almost friendly. By the time of the series finale, a regular epic final battle, Death showed up to help fight Antipops and save the universe. This showed that Death cares about cosmic balance and the continuation of existence, even though his job is to end lives. The cosmic rules of dying in regular show create a universe where death is not final. It is a negotiation, a wager, a challenge, and sometimes just another obstacle to overcome. The park workers learned how to navigate these rules through trial and error, dying and being resurrected multiple times in the process. Death himself became a recurring character who was more frustrated than threatening, constantly losing wagers and having to honor deals that prevented him from collecting the souls he wanted most. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have The Final 25 Years, Pops' Sacrifice, and Where Every Park Worker Ends Up. The Final 25 Years, Pops' Sacrifice, and Where Every Park Worker Ends Up. The universe reset. Mordecai and Rigby found themselves back at the park on a regular day. Everything seemed normal. Too normal. The moment Rigby stepped into the house, his memory kicked in. He remembered everything. The space journey, the battle, Pops flying into the sun with his brother. He ran to find Mordecai, who was confused and annoyed, acting like nothing happened. But when Rigby showed him the buried Blu-rays they had made to preserve their memories, Mordecai touched the discs and everything came flooding back. They realized the universe had reset again. Time had gone back to the beginning, but this time, something was different. They remembered. The memory preservation worked. Mordecai and Rigby used the power from the very first episode to travel forward in time, back to the moment when Pops and Antipops were about to collide their fists and destroy everything again. Antipops saw them coming and destroyed the power with a single attack. The device that let them travel through time shattered into pieces. Pops continued fighting his brother, but he could see the pattern now. He had flashbacks to all the previous attempts. Every single fight ended the same way. Both brothers would charge at each other. Their fists would collide. The universe would explode and reset. The cycle would start over. It had happened billions of times. Pops realized that fighting Antipops the traditional way would always lead to the same result. A stalemate, an explosion, a reset. Nothing would ever change. The fabric of reality started falling apart during the fight. Pops got knocked backward through dimensional barriers and ended up inside the original student film where he was first created. He was literally thrown into The Naive Man from Lollyland, the animated short from 2005 that existed before Regular Show was even a series. He had to escape from that reality. Giant letters spelling out Regular Show started falling around him like buildings. Rigby turned into adhesive notes. Mordecai found himself trapped in a storyboard panel. Antipops was tearing through the fourth wall itself, ripping apart the structure of their existence. Pops made his choice. He launched himself at Antipops and grabbed him. Not to punch him, to hug him. The hug was pure love, pure kindness. The negative energy that made Auntie Pops so powerful started shrinking. The Titan form collapsed. Auntie Pops returned to his regular size. For the first time in billions of years, Auntie Pops felt something other than hatred. He felt his brother caring about him. Pops told Mordecai and Rigby telepathically what he had to do. He promised them this was a happy ending. He told them to take care of each other. He said goodbye. Then Pops grabbed Auntie Pops and flew toward the sun of Lollyland. Auntie Pops realized what was happening. For 5 seconds, he felt genuine happiness. He felt relief. He reconciled with his brother. Both of them made peace with each other before they flew into the sun together. The sacrifice worked. The cycle broke. The universe did not reset. Everyone that Auntie Pops had erased came back. Muscle Man returned. High Five Ghost returned. All the allies who had been destroyed during the battle were alive again. The park dome survived. But Pops and Auntie Pops were gone forever. The park crew spent 3 years in space getting back to Earth. 3 full years floating through the cosmos in a dome that used to sit in a city park. They had left Earth immediately after Rigby graduated high school. Now they were finally coming home. Earth time had moved differently. While they were gone, life kept going for everyone who stayed behind. People moved on. Families grew. The world changed. When the park dome finally landed back on Earth, a massive crowd was waiting. News reporter Del Hanlon was there, broadcasting the return live. Margaret Smith, who was also a news reporter, rushed to the park when she heard they were back. The Space Rangers walked out of the dome like heroes. The crowd cheered. Families ran forward to reunite with people they had not seen in 3 years. Mordecai's parents, William and Hillary, grabbed their son and hugged him tight. They kissed him. They held him. Rigby's family did the same. His father, Sherman, was wearing jeans instead of his usual shorts. Sherman was proud of his son for the first time in his life. Rigby had graduated high school. Rigby had gone to space. Rigby had helped save the universe. Barbara and Don hugged Rigby too. The family was back together. Muscle Man saw Starla waiting for him. She was holding a baby, a 3-year-old girl, their daughter. Starla had been pregnant when the park dome left Earth. Muscle Man never knew. He had spent 3 years in space while his wife gave birth alone and raised their daughter without him. When Muscle Man saw his child for the first time, he cried tears of joy. His face showed pure happiness and shock and love all mixed together. Skips reunited with Tecmo. They did their signature bro hug. Margaret ran to Eileen and hugged her best friend. High Five Ghost and Celia had an even purer moment. They spun around holding each other. Their love was genuine and deep. Benson saw his pig Applesauce waiting for him. The pig had stayed alive and healthy during the 3 years. Rigby and Eileen finally kissed on the lips. It was their first proper on-screen kiss. They had been together for years, but always kept things subtle. Now, after 3 years apart, they could not hold back. The kiss was real and emotional, and long overdue. Mr. Mellard stood in the crowd watching everything. He was not celebrating. He was crying. His son Pops had sacrificed himself to save the universe. Mr. Mellard would never see Pops again. He had adopted Pops as a baby. He raised him. He loved him. Now Pops was gone forever. Mordecai noticed Mr. Mellard during a news interview and saw the grief on his face. The old man had lost his only child. A memorial service was held at the park. Workers erected a massive statue of Pops in the center of the grounds. The statue showed Pops exactly as he was. Tall, lollipop head, mustache, gentleman's outfit. The plaque at the base read everything that mattered about who Pops was. It said he chased butterflies. He loved to laugh. He saved the universe. He was our friend. Below that was his name, Pops Mellard. Benson brought flowers and laid them at the base. Everyone stood in silence, honoring the person who gave up everything so they could continue living. Sometime after the memorial service, Mordecai and Rigby quit their jobs at the park. They packed up their belongings. Rigby loaded his trampoline into Eileen's car. That trampoline had been his bed for 6 years. Mordecai packed items from past episodes into his car trunk. They said goodbye to each other and to Eileen. The three of them shared one last group hug. Then they drove away. The fellowship ended. The crew that had worked together for 6 years split apart to pursue their own lives. Mordecai went to art school. He finally pursued his dream of being a painter. He graduated and opened his own studio. His artwork was abstract. He painted things that reminded him of his past. One painting resembled CJ. Another looked like Margaret. One showed Rigby. Another honored Pops. Mordecai never reconnected romantically with Margaret or CJ. Margaret remained friends with him and became a muse for his art. CJ moved on completely. She became a professional dodgeball player and never spoke to Mordecai again. Mordecai met a woman at an art convention. Her name was Steph. She was a female bat. She was an artist just like him. Mordecai fell in love with someone he did not feel awkward around, someone who understood his passion, someone who was not tied to his complicated romantic past. They got married. They had 3 children together, 2 sons and 1 daughter. The kids were hybrids, part blue jay, part bat. Mordecai's family was happy and stable and built on genuine connection. Rigby moved in with Eileen. They got married. They had 2 daughters together. Both daughters were much taller than their parents, following the family pattern. Rigby kept his mustache from the Ugly Moons episode. He looked almost exactly like future Rigby from the Regular Show movie. The family lived a regular life. Rigby played video games at home with his eldest daughter. A framed picture of the park house hung in their living room. Rigby never forgot where he came from. His job after leaving the park was never specified. He just lived his life, raising his family and enjoying the simple things. Muscleman and Starla moved into a nicer trailer. They had 5 more children after their first daughter, 6 kids total. The children adopted many of Muscleman's mannerisms. They would take off their shirts and yell just like their father. Muscleman continued being himself, loud, obnoxious, loyal. By the time the 25-year reunion happened, Muscleman was a grandfather. His family kept growing. Benson stayed at the park. He became the owner after Mr. Mellard died. Benson reunited with Pam, the scientist he had dated before. They got back together. They got married. The couple did not have biological children, but they adopted 4 cats. They also kept Applesauce and his descendants. Benson trained a new crew of park workers. The new employees looked similar to his old crew. There was a zebra who resembled Mordecai, a hedgehog who resembled Rigby, an overweight human male who resembled Muscleman, a tree who resembled High Five Ghost. Benson became noticeably happier and more cheerful when giving morning announcements to his new workers. He had mellowed out over the years. Skips continued working at the park. He was the only original crew member who stayed. Skips was immortal. He would outlive everyone. But he was content. He still did his job as a groundskeeper. He also opened a part-time car repair shop, calling back to his mechanical skills shown in earlier episodes. Skips made one significant wardrobe change. He ditched his trademark blue jeans for jean shorts. It was a small detail, but it showed that even someone who had lived for hundreds of years could evolve. High Five Ghost and Celia became famous party DJs. They traveled the world playing shows. They performed in Prague and other major cities. They got married. They had a son together. High Five Ghost grew a goatee during the 25-year period. He looked older, but happy. Celia and Fives lived the life they always wanted. Music, travel, love, family. 25 years after the final battle, the park held a reunion. Everyone came back. Mordecai arrived with his full brown beard and his wife Steph and their 3 kids. His children were on their phones like typical modern teenagers. Rigby showed up with Eileen and their 2 daughters. The daughters played with Muscleman's kids. Muscleman brought Starla and their grandchildren. The family was huge and chaotic and loud. High Five Ghost and Celia brought their son. Benson and Pam attended together. Skips was there, wearing his jean shorts. 2 statues now stood in the center of the park. One for Pops, one for Mr. Mellard, who had died sometime before the reunion. The park honored both of them, the father and the adopted son. Both gone, both remembered. The group took a photo together. Everyone smiled. They talked about old times. They remembered the 6 years they spent together getting into supernatural trouble and barely avoiding death on a weekly basis. Then Mordecai and Rigby walked to the shed. They found old video games and brought them out. They started playing together, just like they used to. Rigby made a joke about doing it for old cart's sake, referencing a phrase they used years ago. Mordecai and Rigby, now 57 years old, laughed about how dumb their old puns were, but they played the games anyway. 2 old friends reliving their youth one more time. In another plane of existence, Pop sat watching everything. He was in what could be described as heaven. A VHS tape ejected from a television with a built-in VCR. The tape was labeled Regular Show. Pops had been watching his friends, watching their lives unfold, watching them grow up and start families and come back together. He could see everything they did. He could relive every moment they shared. Pop smiled his gentle smile. He spoke his signature phrase one last time. Jolly good show. The final 25 years proved that Pop's sacrifice was not in vain. The universe continued. People grew up. Families formed. Jobs changed. Love happened. Life moved forward. Mordecai and Rigby started as 2 23-year-old slackers who avoided work and caused chaos. They ended as grown men with families and careers and real responsibilities. Benson went from a constantly angry manager who threatened to fire everyone to a happy park owner with a wife and cats. Muscleman became a father and grandfather. Skips found peace in his immortal existence. High Five Ghost and Celia built a life together. Everyone found their place. The park itself transformed 3 times. First, it was a normal city park. Then it became a space dome flying through the cosmos for 3 years. Finally, it returned to Earth as a memorial site that honored the ones who saved everything. New workers maintained the grounds. The grass still needed mowing, leaves still needed raking. Life at the park continued with different people doing the same jobs. Pops never got to experience those 25 years. He never met Mordecai's wife Steph or his children. He never saw Rigby's daughters. He never attended Muscleman's baby showers or High Five Ghost's wedding. He never tasted the joy of watching his friends succeed and grow and build lives beyond the park. But he knew they would. That was why he made the choice. That was why he hugged his brother instead of fighting him. That was why he flew into the sun. The sacrifice ended the 14 billion year cycle. No more resets. No more universe-ending punches. No more tapestries showing the same fight happening over and over with different versions of the same people. The cycle that had repeated billions of times finally stopped because Pops chose love over violence. He chose to save his brother and the universe at the same time. And it worked. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.